Call the meeting to order. Seated tonight are 5 regular members: Ben Philbrook, myself, David Rathbun, Fred Duggan, Lynn Conway, Gardner Young. Also here are 2 alternates, Chuck Sheehan and Ryan Deasy. Minutes?
Make a motion to approve the minutes?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Administrative review. Keith?
Sure. Well, first of all, I just want to say that if anyone's here for public hearings 7B, which is Michael Norcia Jr., the subdivision on Oakwood Ave, the applicants have requested that that hearing is opened and continued to the next meeting on March 17th in this room, so that won't be discussed tonight. So the administrative review items, 5D1 is 2033 ZON, 2 Lincoln Ave LLC, GCAT, Catalan, a zoning permit application for change of use from retail to retail restaurant and associated sign, property located at 2 Lincoln Ave, Unit 4, Mystic, Assessor's Map 174, Block 15, Lot 3, Zone LS5. This application is just for a change of use for an existing, part of an existing building. It's the old parcel store on 2 Lincoln Avenue near, it's Pasta Fresca is the deli next door. Just looking to replace that with Herbalife Nutrition Food Service Establishment, which seems to be a retail restaurant use per our regulations. It'll have 8 seats or less and will function as a nutrition membership club, which is sort of like a club where you can join and have these new Herbalife shakes and things like that. It meets the bulk and use requirements of the LS5 zone, and the parking demand is not increasing there, and no other issues.
What is the commission's feeling on this? Any problem?
No problem.
No problem.
No problem. Lynn? I hear a motion?
Motion to approve?
I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I guess my mic's on. I don't know if it's on or off.
Item 5D2, request a determination from the commission as to whether a farm distillery qualifies within the processing, bottling of agriculture and aquaculture products grown on premises use allowed by special use permit. Property located at 170 Pawcatuck Ave, Pawcatuck, Assessor's Map 35, Block 2, Lot 6, Zone RR80. This request that you have in a letter from the owners of the Highland Homestead, they're looking to know if they can apply for a special use permit for a farm distillery on their existing farm, which is at the end of Pawcatuck
Yeah,
Avenue.
they're here if they like.
Okay.
If you have any questions from the mains.
There's a new state law that allows farm distilleries specifically, passed a few years ago. When you look at the zoning regulations, it's a little bit confusing whether it's allowed. So in cases like this, we often kick it to the commission to get their sense, just to figure out what the process is, if they can apply, or if it's just something that isn't allowed. Now, one thing I found after putting all this together is that the state law basically sets forth what a farm distillery is, but there's also a section in there that says, it talks about the things that they can do if they have a farm distillery, like tastings and sale of what they produce there. But also says a town may, by ordinance or zoning regulation, prohibit any such offering, tasting, or selling at retail at premises within such town for which a manufacturer permit for a farm distillery has been issued. So that basically seems to say that the town can have it in their regulations that they can't do the accessory stuff like, have it open to the public, But it doesn't say that the town can prohibit just a farm distilling liquor. So that's another factor in this. When you look at our zoning regulations, they only allow distilleries in the new Heritage Mill District and in the Agricultural Heritage District, but not where they are in the RR80. However, the RR80 zone does allow for just the general processing, bottling, conversion of agricultural products, primarily grown on premises, which is sort of a catch-all for processing the stuff that you grow there.
Chief, as I remember your report, the applicant was willing to, or made the representation that they would not be offering anything in the public.
Yeah. Mr. Maine, would you like to?
And if we can stipulate that,
Yeah.
it would seem to fit.
David's here. Or Jill, which one want to talk?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, at this time, we're just looking to just set up the distillery and just, I mean, no sales there. Because we already know a couple places that will sell it for us.
But what I'm suggesting is that if we were to grant this, it would be on the condition that there not be any public sale on the premises. Not, maybe not ever, but, you know, for the
No,
foreseeable
but,
future, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
That would be a condition of approval.
But I'm just a little confused. So is this just a question?
It
or
is.
it
They're
an
not asking,
application?
they're not asking for any sort of permit tonight. It's
So
just sort of an
just a
interpretation
question
of
the
how we
interpretation.
look at this regulation and can they apply for it.
Yeah.
Because we need to know before we can go any further, because if it's
Sure.
a no, then we need
Sure.
to figure it out from there, where to go from there.
Sure. So my question is this: based on what you've said about the state regulations, that we can have, regulations within our zoning that says you can have a distillery, but you cannot have these ancillary activities. Do we need to make a decision, change the regulations first before any of this goes forward, so someone doesn't come back and say, yeah, but I've already got an application in for this? So it doesn't, so you can't change it while I'm mid-process. So how does that work, Keith?
I think it says in our regulations you can't sell it anyway. Correct, Keith?
Well, in our definition of a distillery, where zoning says you can do
No,
it,
we're not talking about that. I'm talking about the farm produce.
in the state law,
No. Under our regulation, the bottling, processing of farm products.
yeah. Let's see what that says here.
Processing.
No, this was what I was looking for. Accessory use in that zone, you can have buildings or stands for display and sale of produce primarily grown on premises. Doesn't quite talk about that.
Right, and so my point is, again, it's just, the order that the process needs to take place. So do we need to have a thorough discussion whether we want to have some kind of regulation about the ancillary activities, make that decision, change the reg, then come back to this particular question and perhaps your application later on. Because I have a question as to whether if we entertain this now, then is it, we come back, we decide that we're going to change our reg, limit it in some way. It's not, this is grandfathered in. The process itself, I think, should be a discussion, a decision, a change in reg, if that's what the group decides, and then to deal with this question, based on what the state is saying.
Yeah, and part of it, I didn't have time to check with the state as far as how other towns deal with this and to sort of clarify what rights that state law gives them at the local level. Because it might be that this state law was written where they don't have to get any permit from the town, they just get that state permit, and they can do it as long as they don't offer it for sale on their property. So it might even be that a special use permit isn't even required, the way the state law is written.
So do you think we should get some advice from our town attorneys and table this until we have some more information?
We might want to get advice from, at least from the state, to see how,
I just don't want to get caught
Yeah.
up in process.
Excuse me, would a distillery generally can include an allowance for public sale of their product in
It-
town, in Stonington?
it could.
It could,
It can,
it doesn't necessarily.
yeah, and the town can, through zoning, say that a farm distillery can't do those things. In general, the questions of what can a farm do is really sort of loose in our regulations. Where, sometimes farms ask us, can I do this certain thing? And our regulations don't offer much in the way of guidance. So this is one of many questions that could arise with farm-type uses.
And then if they went for the agricultural heritage district, which they qualified for,
Yeah, that would make it more clear-cut. They could,
do by
But
then.
that's an
Yeah.
entirely different thing.
yeah.
That's an entirely
Yeah, I'm
different
saying this, but
process.
that would, it's in that they can do it.
Yep, but, it's a larger process, et cetera.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, I'm not saying that this would not work. I just think you have to take it step by step, and we need to get some clarity, because I think it's a very gray area, and, you haven't gotten any feedback from the state. You haven't
Yeah.
talked to.
And it is something that, would apply to all farms, so.
Yeah.
You want to
So-
get back to us next month on that?
Yeah, yeah.
2 weeks.
Mhm.
2 weeks, we have another meeting, we'll get to it.
Thank you.
Not yours.
Do you want to do that FEMA public hearing before or after the Seaport?
Afterwards.
Okay.
So we do North here first, and then Seaport.
So we're going to shuffle things up, and we'll start off with PZ 2002SD and CAM Michael Norcia Jr. with Greg Fettis. Subdivision and coastal area management review applications for a 3-lot subdivision on a 1.13 acre lot. Property located on Oakwood Ave, Pawcatuck, Accessors Map 5, Block 1, Lot 5, Zone RA-15.
Seated tonight are our 5 regular members on this hearing. Do I hear a motion to continue?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Is it continued to when, Keith?
Well, it's March 17th,
March 17th.
7 PM at this location.
Want to do Seaport?
Yep. Seaport.
Moving along, we'll go to the Mystic Seaports application, PZ 2003ZC, SPA and CAM, Mystic Seaport Museum, Seafrost. Master Plan Zone Change, Site Plan and Coastal Area Management Review applications for demolition of a 2-story restaurant building and construction of a 3-story restaurant, boutique hotel, guest cottage, utility structure, swimming pool, and the relocation of the dock office to Chubb's Wharf. Property located at 75, parentheses, 105, Greenmanville Ave, Mystic, Assessors Map 173, Block 1, Lot 1, Zone MHD.
The way the public hearing will work is we'll hopefully have the applicant speak first, and then after every section of the applicants, at that time, I'll ask the commission members for questions, and then we'll go on to the next section of the application. Then we'll have everyone that's in favor, will have an opportunity to speak, then anyone opposed, and then the applicant does have a right to rebuttal after that, and then the staff will report last. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay. Can everyone hear me okay? Good. For the record, my name is John Casey. I'm a partner with the law firm of Robinson & Cole, here on behalf of the applicant. As the notice said, we're here for a master plan amendment, site plan, coastal site plan approval for 2 projects at the Mystic Seaport. As I think about this project, and we have a good crowd here tonight, and I hope you'll agree at the end of our presentation, this is an exciting and transformative project for the Seaport, for redevelopment of the Latitude 41 site. But before we get into that, let me introduce who's with me here this evening. From the Seaport, we have Steve White, the president, who will be speaking shortly. Also from the Seaport is Ken Wilson, the director of facilities, and David Patton are in the back there. We have the Seaport's partner in this project from Greenwich Hospitality Group. We have Charles Mallory, Clifford Mallory is in the back there, and Emmanuel Demore. And the Mallory name may be familiar to some of you. The family has a very long history here in Mystic that they hope to continue with this project. Chad Frost from Kenton Frost is someone you're probably all familiar with, the project landscape architect. You'll hear from him. Bruce Beinfeld from Beinfeld Architecture is the architect. He will speak to you about the architect of the project. Mark Vertucci from Fuss & O'Neill on the end is our traffic engineer. You'll hear from him as well. Joseph Wren, our PE from Indigo Land Design, is our civil engineer. He cannot be here. His report is in the package, and Chad will speak to the civil engineering issues. We don't think there are many of them, so we think you have the information you need already in your packet. So with that, just a brief overview. For everyone in the room, the Seaport is a zoning district unto itself. The Maritime Heritage District was adopted in 2005 specifically to cover the Seaport property. It was intended to give them more flexibility in developing their property to, rather than comply with the prior residential zoning designation that it had, which resulted in many nonconformities. The whole purpose is to evolve over time to meet the changing needs of the Seaport, and at the same time allows the public to comment and for this commission to have control over what happens there at the Seaport within the standards provided in the regulations. So we're actually on our 7th amendment to the master plan. The last 2, last summer we came before you with multiple projects, and we introduced this project and spent some time speaking of it, but at that time we didn't have any real details. So we're happy to be here relatively soon after that meeting with all the details. And then that was number 5, and number 6 was in the fall. You'll probably remember the Global Foundation for Ocean Exploration, the Science and Exploration Center in the back of the south parking lot. And so those are all in the books. All those changes have been approved. And now we have before you an application. As I said, it's really 2 amendments. One is pretty minor. It's the relocation of the dock office. from the location near the Visitor Center to Chubb's Wharf. We'll speak about that briefly. And the second is the Latitude 41 replacement. So with that, let me turn it over to Steve White, the president of the Seaport, who will explain the sort of context and how the Seaport got to this point where this project has been proposed and is moving forward. So Steve, if you want to come up.
Thank you, John, and thank you, commissioners. My pleasure to be in front of you to speak about this project at the museum. To create just a little bit of context and not to bore you too much with a lot of history, but we like history at the museum, so bear with me just for a second. The Latitude 41 building, otherwise known as Seaman's Inn, the construction began in 1964 to create a restaurant and destination there at the north gate of the museum in anticipation of what was to come and to be a very significant period for the museum as we were leading up to the bicentennial. And in fact, in 1976, roughly 575,000 people visited the museum on an annual basis, and thus the infrastructure for the museum and for that site was created to handle that kind of volume. It was created for dining and special functions. It served the museum relatively well all of these years. And fast forward to 2016, when the museum began a fairly comprehensive strategic planning process. The process was designed and implemented in order to figure out ways in which we could enhance the financial sustainability of a very large site. We have about 50 acres under management at the museum, all privately funded, no line item funding from the state of Connecticut. And so what we're trying to do is to look at all elements of the property and all of our programs to make sure that these programs and facilities were being utilized for the future in ways in which it would contribute to the well-being of the museum. As you know, we have a tremendous amount of infrastructure to take care of with respect to bulkheads, buildings, programs for visitor experience, our staff, and of course the collection that the museum manages. The building specifically, the Latitude 41 building, as we implemented this review, became very clear. In fact, we didn't take a lot of thought to understand that the building is old, it's challenged structurally. We have flooding issues on a regular basis. And at the end of our assessment, it was clear that the best step forward was to replace the building, not to renovate the building, for a host of reasons, which I won't get into. To understand what might be the highest and best use of that space, we began with an RFP process to help us identify what the new reality would be for this space. There's a big difference in terms of how tourism is addressed in 2016 or now 2020 compared to 1964. And what we need to take into consideration is destination tourism, destination weddings, destination dining, and indeed Mystic and Stonington have become known as a destination for dining and many, many other elements that make our community so strong. Destination tourism requires places where people can go, park their car, leave it there for a weekend, and enjoy all that the region has to offer. So as we were considering this sort of change in the way in which people are looking at tourism, we were advised that the highest and best use of this property would indeed be to continue food service and special function space, but also to add a boutique hotel to support that concept of destination tourism. And so with that in mind, we then issued the final RFP process, understanding that by creating such a destination, the combination, say, of the Thompson Exhibition Building, the planned boutique hotel, and the potential rowing park next door, that we are creating a destination that was far more viable for our partner to be, far more viable for Mystic Seaport Museum, and thus much, much better for the town of Stonington. So the conclusion of the RFP process yielded the result of choosing the Greenwich Hospitality Group to work with us on this transformational project. The group knows the museum well. Charles Mallory knows the museum incredibly well. He is a former trustee and understands the way in which we blend history, preservation of history, visitor experience, and honor the sense of place along the river. We had confidence that whatever Greenwich Hospitality Group would design and build would fit with our community and fit with our vision for the future. And importantly, there's history and documentation about the high quality of the Delamar Hotel brand, which we'll get into a little bit tonight. So that's the backdrop. That's why we're proposing this project. It's why we are partnering with Greenwich Hospitality Group. And I hope that you find the presentation this evening helpful and appropriate. Thank you very much. Oh, yeah, sorry. I meant to add something about tourism destination. You may have seen our most recent exhibition in the Thompson Building, the RMW Turner exhibition. It was an extraordinary success, bringing 91,000 people to Mystic Seaport Museum in the dead of winter. That just doesn't happen very often. It was represented an 89% increase in visitors, which, speaking to my friends downtown, meant a great deal of positive impact on the region at a time when things are very, very slow. So it's just a small example of the power of destination tourism and bringing things to the community that will serve it well.
Since you mentioned that your exhibit brought 91,000 people and shopkeepers, et cetera, said that it really added to their business. Do you have any numbers? Any increase in the commerce in that time period that you know of?
I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for their businesses other than anecdotal evidence. But the Arts and Council has a economic impact indicator. So just for that one exhibition, filling in all the blanks in that particular calculator, it showed a $3.4 million economic impact on the community.
So can you just explain to me what that calculator is? Is it an estimate?
It's a calculator that the Arts and Culture Council in the state of Connecticut puts together. I don't necessarily understand the algorithm. I just fill in the blanks. How much was the expense? How much was the revenue? How many people came? And it does it for me.
Okay.
I don't know how it works.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. And I think the point, I whispered in Steve's ear to make sure he added that, because I think it's an example of the planning that the Seaport has put into its projects. That's what the Thompson Building was designed to do, specifically get people into Mystic when they weren't coming to Mystic. And we think that's a good example of the success they've had, and it's the same process that's gone into this project as well. So with that, I will turn it over to Chad Frost, who will run you through the project, the site plan.
Good evening. Again, my name is Chad Frost from Kent Frost Landscape Architecture, based out of Mystic. So we are pretty excited to be here again and going over this project in more detail this time. I have the slides up. Pretty much everything that's contained in your packet is up there. So the first bunch of slides are just kind of, I'm going to say, ugly black and white drawings that we submit to you. I will try to go through them and make sense of them and highlight what I think is important and what you guys typically look at. And then we'll get onto the rendered plan at the end and talk about a little bit more detail where there's a little bit more to look at. So what's on the screen now is what you're hopefully kind of familiar with, which is our typical master plan update, where we show the entire campus. If this, so the entire campus, which is in the outline. The Rossi Mill is up here on the upper left, the south parking lot and the north parking lot, and main campus that we're all familiar with. Highlighted there in the outline is a Latitude 41 building, And the proposed hotel, the two small buildings in front, are what we're calling project number 1, as far as the demolition of Latitudes 41 and the replacement hotel structure. And then this is the dock office that is moving from this current location over to Chubb's Wharf, as John mentioned.
Maybe we'll just pause real quick. If anyone on the commission has questions about the dock office relocation, we could get that out of the way.
Is that where the Sabino tickets are sold?
Sabino tickets? No.
No, it's right next door to the Sabino dock. It's the little brown building right by the Gerda 3.
It's the dock master's office.
Right, handles all the dock, boats coming in and going out. And this location serves that purpose better because it's closer to all of those amenities. Just zooming in so you can see a little bit better detail. And as we start going through, you've seen this is the building list. It's impossible to read there. But I did zoom in a little bit on the highlighted areas. So the up top building, what was building number 3, which is the Latitude 41 structure, is what's coming down. And then also there's another building, building 187 is actually the pump house. So Latitudes, one of the reasons Latitudes does need to come down is the basement is an occupied basement that's at elevation 2. And it is constantly having water come through, and there's an entire house built next to it as a pump house to pump it dry and keep it dry 24 hours a day. So those 2 structures are coming down, and then we have the 3 new structures going in. And there's also the North Heads is a building that gets replaced and integrated into the new hotel. The signage plan. So we, as part of the master plan, we regulate all of the signage visible from the right-of-way. Again, this is a lovely map that's very difficult to read. This is Route 27. This was the approved plan from 2019. What we did is add some X's where signs are going away. This is the directions into the south lot, and these are the signs associated with Latitude 41. And then we've added some circles where there are new signs going in front of the new proposed building. Obviously, in your packets, it's a little bit easier to read. And then this is the sign tabulation that we have to provide every single time, showing certain signs being eliminated, the additional 2 signs that are going in, the total amount of square footage, and the fact that right now we will have a proposed 435 square feet of signage. The grand total approved signage on the site is actually 591, so we're holding 155 square feet of signage in excess. To talk a little bit about the existing conditions, because this is easier to look at than some of those black and white maps. Obviously, this is the Thompson building to the side, Route 27, and the driveway into the north lots up above. You can see just the edge of the Rossi Mill. This obviously is the Latitude 41 structure. You can see it's been built on a couple of times. This is the extra kitchen space. You can see some of the outdoor tent events areas. And then the north laneway, as it's called, which is a service area, you can actually see a vehicle at the loading dock at Thompson currently. These are the north heads. And the lawn that we're all familiar with where the tents go for weddings. I want to point out also this paved driveway gravel area, which is currently the delivery area for Latitudes. And that's currently that 30-foot easement that we've talked about that's on Boathouse Park property, the town property. So the property line, if I can hold this pointer steady enough, is actually right along the edge of the building. And then all that gravel that you're used to seeing and where delivery trucks currently pull in, and the dumpsters and the compactors that are out there now is actually on town property in that 30-foot easement.
Can you point out the pump house, please?
It is right there.
Yeah, okay, thank you, got it.
And that,
Good job.
yeah, so it's right beside, you don't really see it when you're there. It's fenced off from most of the public view, but it's pretty interesting if you look down in it. Again, one thing I will point out is the proximity of Latitudes, how close it is to Route 27. We all know the stairs, as you get across, you have to go straight up the stairs. The public right now, 100% of the public and staff all park across the street in the north lot and then have to come across through the crosswalk and walk over. That's one of the problems that we hope to solve with this new proposal. Again, this is the existing conditions survey. It's pretty difficult to read, which is why we did the aerial image. I'm going to run through some of the plans. If you have questions, please stop me and ask me, but because it's going to be difficult, you have it in your packet to see in detail. But this is just the sedimentation erosion control plan. Basically, we're around the entire perimeter of the project, we're putting in a fence as well as a silt fence and doing standard best management practices for stormwater protection. This is the demolition plan. As I mentioned, pretty much everything on the site from the road goes. So the building goes, the sidewalks go, the pump house goes, the compactor goes, the sidewalks, the tents, all of that gets removed. From an improvement standpoint, this is our improvement plan. I will go over again this better in detail when you can see it in color, which is a little nicer to look at. This is the grading plan. So what did work out pretty well in our favor, it's again going to be hard to see on the screen, but we're at about elevation 8 at the road, and then naturally it comes up to 9, 10, and 11 by the backside of latitudes. And we're able to keep that going and come in so that we can come in at grade flush with the front door. It's important to note from a grading perspective, latitudes right now is obviously very FEMA non-compliant. The basement's at elevation 2, the first floor is well below flood elevation. This new building will be set 2 feet above flood elevation. So in this area, flood is 11, and the finished floor will be elevation 13. So right now, the requirement is to be flood +1, and we're building to flood +2, looking to the future and knowing that sea level will be probably rising in the future.
I have a question. So
Yep.
you won't have to bring any fill to get to that?
There's a minor amount of fill needed right between, I'll say that circle driveway there and the front of the building.
Okay.
But that fill will most likely be excavated out as part of the foundation. The basement comes out, so we don't, there's not a mass import of fill.
Thank you.
Another question, Mr. Chairman, if I can, through you. Yes. Since the civil engineer is not here, is the hotel considered displacement in the flood zone because it's at elevation 13?
No, it's not, because of the way the hotel will be constructed, and you can jump in, John, but there is a small basement underneath, which you'll see, which is wet or dry flood proofed. And the restrooms that I mentioned, the north heads get tucked in. They're accessible at grade from the north laneway right over here. And because they have to be at grade, they are also dry flood proofed. And then the surrounding area that will be foundation will be able to be a crawl space that is vented so it does not displace the flood zone.
Great. That dramatically reduces the requirement for compensatory activation, but I think you should tabulate somewhere on the plans that it's a balance.
Okay.
The town engineer goes through an audit process every year, and as a part of that process, we go through applications like this. He's going to be able to demonstrate to FEMA that it's a net wash. So that calculation should be run by Fuss and O'Neill, whoever is the civil engineer.
Yep, we can happily provide that.
I'm looking at a March 3rd letter. I'll keep this brief. On the second page of the March 3rd letter from DEEP, they raised the prospect. There's a number of options. One, you can flood-proof this, and the other option is a LOMA option. And the LOMA is not possible here. You're shaking your head, and I'm wondering why, because it addresses a whole bunch of issues about having a hotel in a floodplain zone.
Well, it does. It's again, for the record, John Casey, it's nothing that the team had considered because the amount of fill was not a great amount, and because both the finished floor of the hotel, of the restaurant space where people are going to be, is 2 feet above base flood elevation, and the basement is going to be dry flood-proofed. That's the approach we are taking to it from a flood management point of view, flood-proofing and elevation, rather than trying to put in enough fill and convince FEMA that we've actually changed the entire elevation, that this would basically have to be, it'd be like putting it on an island. And we don't think it's nothing we considered. And this is the first.
It allows you to have a basement. It allows you to have almost exactly what you have here if you can demonstrate that the base flood elevation doesn't touch the building. So you're 99% of the way there, the way you've built this. Mm-hmm. And if you get the hotel out of the flood zone, no evacuation plans, no flood proofing, you're out of the flood zone. I just asked that you consider.
I don't disagree. And it's one of those things that we have done in other projects, and we've done them actually retroactively after the fact of approval sometimes. In this case, what's driving it is the north heads and the ability to have public access to those at grade at the elevation that they need to be at without having to be, we're at elevation 5 or 6, right about where those heads are hitting the grade. And to get up to elevation 12, the amount of ramps and everything, it just seemed like it was going to be a significant eyesore just to go through the process for the Loma specifically.
That feature would
destroys the Loma.
the idea of the Loma.
Right, right. And we're also using, we haven't talked about it yet, but there is we're using the area that is currently the Thompson kind of back of house delivery area. That's where the deliveries for the hotel will be going as well. And so we need an access door there that's also at grade, also dry flood proofed. And so all of those doors are what require us to go through the process. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. I have some other questions pertaining to traffic, Mr. Chairman.
Well, wait.
Plus, O'Neill wrap this up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Trying to think if there's anything else grading-wise that we didn't talk about. Basically, all of the grading around the perimeter doesn't change. We can come into the top or into the main floor pretty easily, as I mentioned, without a ton of fill, and come in. And then we do have a couple of terraces, as I mentioned in the application. There's a pool on this side, and then we terrace back down to grade pretty much as quickly as we can. Oh, sure. The average, we also, just to go back to the grading, so we did measure average grade all the way around from the proposed and then the actual height of the building. The height of the building is 41.5 feet from average grade. And I'll just note that that's within the allowable zone table, that we can have anywhere from 35 feet as a right and up to 45 feet during a master plan application to get it approved. And so we're right in the middle, which I will say was quite a feat. In order to get the finished floor 2 feet above flood zone, right, which means we have to be effectively 3 feet above the surrounding grade. And because this zone doesn't allow us to measure from the flood elevation, we have to measure from average grade. That meant our average grade was pushing us down, and to get 2 or 3 floors and a roof and make it look good within that height requirement was definitely something we worked on quite a bit. This is the lighting plan. Again, difficult to read. We highlighted the areas where there are lights. So there are existing lights along the front of the Thompson building. We're proposing to continue using those along the streetscape and start to enhance the streetscape as we run along there. We expect to obviously continue that through Boathouse Park and continue it up so that we can begin to slow some of the traffic coming down Route 27. We have a simple light coming into the driveway. We have very low-level bollard lights around the entrance. And then we have one light out here for the north heads, again, for boaters that are out there coming to shore at night. So very minimalistic lighting. And in the back, all the steps are lit with under tread lights. So it's just a very low LED light under the tread, so there's no overhead glary lights shining into the public. This is the planting plan. Again, a whole bunch of circles at this perspective, but everything that's required and then some for this project. These were some of the details I felt was at least worth showing you. Again, that's the light that's out by the street that we currently use at the Seaport, some small pedestrian lights in the bollards that'll be close to the front door, and then the LED light strips that go underneath the treads on the steps. This lovely spaghetti map is the utility plan. There are obviously significant services out in the road, which we will be tapping into. There's a sewer line that runs through the north laneway, which will be our tap to get everything back out. So we have utilities crisscrossing back and forth. We do feel there is significant or sufficient service out there. We do know there is currently the moratorium for the WPCA. We are running through the full calculations on the new building loading because we actually think there's a chance that the new building loading will be less than what Latitude uses currently. The Latitude 41 restaurant is a very large kitchen. They do quite a bit of cooking there as part of their catering operation. The new restaurant building is significantly smaller from a restaurant perspective, and the kitchen is only servicing the restaurant and the hotel. And so we actually think there could be a reduction, which will allow us to go forward even if the moratorium takes a while to get lifted. Obviously, we'll have to get that fully worked out with WPCA as we go forward, but we fully understand it.
Water use records should make that examination much easier.
Kind.
Should accompany the analysis.
it will accompany it, and I would say it kind of makes it easier. There's a whole lot of uses of water on the Seaport, and trying to figure out who and where and when does get a little challenging. That's why we're still working on it. This lovely plan, this is from Joe Wren, this is our civil engineer. This was our stormwater analysis. So what's hard to read on the left-hand side, all of those greens are the impervious areas currently on site. We are breaking that up. There's currently no stormwater. There's no treatment of any type of stormwater. Everything that lands on the roof or any of the pavements, the tents, all sheds directly off into the river or the basement. That's true. A lot of water from the basement actually gets pumped out all day long. Currently, the proposed plan, again, this is the hotel. The ridge line of the roof is right about there. So everything on the upper side, which is the east side of that line, goes into an infiltrator bank that will be between the hotel and this structure, which is a small guest flexible space. This building, I'll talk about that in a minute. Everything on this side, all of the pink, is the impervious areas, and that will drain into a subsurface infiltrator in between the road. I'll show you that. This is the engineered plans for that. Again, difficult to read. That's the hotel. There's one bank of infiltrators. There's the other bank of infiltrators. I'll point that out on the rendered plan where you can see it a little bit easier. I will note that it's, if you look through the stormwater calcs, it's about 1.5 inches of rain on all impervious that we can capture, treat before a final discharge. Also included within the master plan is our valet circulation plan, which we think is important. We think that that drop-off area is a significant safety improvement for all visitors coming to the restaurant and the hotel. Right now, we all know that people try to pull up along the curb as close as they can get and drop somebody off quickly, and then try to cut across 2 lanes of traffic and make a left into the parking area. Having the ability to drop somebody off is a significant improvement. Having the valet be able to take the car back. Again, this is Rossi Mill. The north parking lot that we're all used to is actually over here. As you come in, we all pull to the right and park over here. But back behind the mill, there's 2 more lots, and so that's where we've identified for at least 75 spaces for the valet to use over there. And that's true parking spaces. That's not squeezing things in the way valets can do, occupying lanes and things like that. So more than sufficient space. And then what we're proposing is that the return comes back down to the north of the mill, takes a left down on Route 27, and then another left into the site. Right, sorry. You can still self-park.
So you can self-park and valet also?
Absolutely. Yep, it's up to individual choice.
I have a question on that valet parking. Is not that the area we said the former Mayflower shed was going to be? Part of it is, yep. Part of it is in that area where the Mayflower will be. We expect that comes up, gets used, goes back down, and finds its home back in the shipyard before all of this probably comes online. It'll get deployed and taken down? Yep. And there's also, there's a whole nother lot in front of the lot that we're showing currently, right in between the building here. Right. That's currently got materials and everything stored in it that's not being used for any parking. And as you'll see in our tabulation, next.
Is the traffic engineer going to talk about the queuing that takes place in the cul-de-sac?
I'm sure he can.
That's fine.
Yep.
We'll wait to hear.
Yep. So going through the parking requirements, again, when we look at what's existing, so everything on this left-hand column is the existing restaurant banquet facilities, the existing rooms, and the number of seats that Latitude 41 currently operates. And when you get down to the total, there's 790 existing seats. In the proposed facility for the restaurant and bar, the banquet facility, a secondary banquet facility, which is actually an outside tent space, and then the lobby, we have a total of 530 spaces, or seats, excuse me. So we have a significant reduction of seats within the restaurant, which requires significantly less parking spaces. When you come down to the lower tabulation, that's the 790 equals 263 spaces versus the proposed 470 seats equals 157 spaces. When we add in some employees and rooms, the hotel rooms, there's 27 rooms. It's at 1 space per room. It's just a modest 27 spaces. So the proposed actually requires 199 spaces versus the current use requires 263 spaces. So a net reduction in the overall required amount of parking. We're not reducing any parking. We're not taking away any parking. It's important to note, but we're pointing out that it's actually a smaller use going in the proposal.
Because I will think there'll be more than 5 employees from the hotel.
Depending on time and stuff like that, and Keith and I had a little brief talk about it, but because we have so many additional spaces left, if it's 5 or 10, it really doesn't have a.
The same with the restaurant banquet. 10 seems pretty minimal for.
Is there any parking for the outdoor seating?
Yes, all of it's included. All outdoor
All
seating,
included in the restaurant?
correct.
And we provide this, again, John Casey for the record, because, so when the zone was created, all the uses existed. Latitude 41 was there, or it was Siemens Inn at the time. So all this existed, and everyone just agreed there was enough parking for what was there. Your regulations don't have a parking requirement for this zone, other than that there'll be adequate parking, provision for adequate parking. So we provide this analysis to show, using the parking counts, if we were doing this, in some other part of the town and we had to create this parking from scratch, what you would require, so we can sort of have an apples to apples comparison. So that's why we provide this, but you have the power under the regulation to just determine that there's adequate parking. And what we hope we've shown you is that there will be adequate parking for this replacement use of Latitude 41, since Latitude 41 was so much larger than the proposed use.
Can you expand on the secondary banquet space, please?
Yep, so that is our outside tent space.
Did you point that out?
I will.
In your
I will show you, yep. And then so looking at the, obviously current use required and the proposed required, the north lot has 395 spaces in it currently. We plan to add 8 drop-off spaces within that valet space. And then there's 7 proposed spaces as shared parking between Boathouse Park and this project, for a total of 410 available parking spaces of the potentially 199 required. So we think there's more than sufficient parking already present.
So just to summarize your numbers a little bit.
Yep.
So the current restaurant facility has 790 seats.
Yes.
Your new restaurant facility will have 530 seats.
Yes.
So there's a 260 seat difference.
Yes,
And you're adding 27 rooms.
correct.
And so reducing by almost a third and adding the 27 rooms, you think financially makes the new building more lucrative than the existing, so it's the addition of the 27 rooms because you're decreasing the restaurant. And that is really the crux of the new building, is to allow for a hotel.
No,
Well,
I mean,
I think so,
again-
because you've got 790 seats currently. You're going to reduce it by almost a third to 530, so it's a 260 seat decrease. So the only difference in reality is 27 rooms in the hotel.
So the decision to proceed in this manner with this type of development was done, Steve alluded to the RFP process they went through, and the proposals they got back, and the market studies they did. It was their determination. I don't think any developer worth his salt would have proposed a development that they didn't think would be, viable in the long run. So while the financial viability of the project isn't a standard in the
It
regulations,
isn't up to us.
I think, and that's why I wanted Steve to point out those numbers for the Thompson building, because they have put a lot of thought into the best way to keep growing and evolving the Seaport so that it meets their needs from both the visitor experience as well as financially. And so, again, while I think one of your other members said it's really not up to the commission whether it's profitable or not, we think it's going to have a great benefit to the community, even though there's less seats in the restaurant.
I'll also jump in and just say, it's also about quality, not quantity. And so from what I've heard from the developer through this last year-plus process of what they're looking to build, it's not to build, right now, we all know Latitudes has up to 3 weddings a day on some days during the summer. They're not interested in running 3 weddings a day. They might do 1 and make it a spectacular wedding, but not running through, not having it be a wedding factory. So it is about quality, not quantity, and that goes for the restaurant as well, that we all have been to Latitudes, and it's not, they don't have 790 people sitting there at any one given time. That's just the total amount of seats that are available. But when they have 2 or 3 weddings going on, they don't have people upstairs in some of their banquet, other rooms. So it's about how you use the spaces that you have, use the seats that you have, and make the most out of what you have. So again, quality, not quantity, to make hopefully this just as much, if not, there should be a greater financial benefit to the project and to the Seaport than what currently is there.
If I may, one of the keys to destination tourism is that we have people coming 12 months a year. And this combination of exhibition building, our gallery quadrangle investment, and the hotel and restaurant is to make sure, like we did with the JMW Turner exhibition, that we have people coming to the museum 12 months of the year, not 5 months of the year. And so that's all part of the business model. The current facility doesn't yield much either to the food service provider or to the museum typically during the winter months. It did much better this winter because of the exhibition.
Isn't it also a factor, though, and I thought you'd mentioned this first in terms of viability. I'm not trying to make your case for you. You book events in advance. Your present facility is in a flood zone. You said it floods frequently. Based on the elevation, I can believe it floods frequently. You can't be in a business that books events that has to cancel them because you're going to be flooded.
That's right.
So in terms of viability, you don't have to say to a prospective client, we can book your wedding if it doesn't rain hard that day and we're not flooded. So you add tremendously to the viability of this facility by getting it out of the flood zone. Tremendously, especially at the elevation that the existing facilities have. That's probably the biggest factor affecting viability between the new and the old, is that you don't have to cancel for a flood.
Again, that was the fundamental decision for why to go forward with replacement of the building and not try to renovate it in place. So this is the rendered site plan. I thought it was a little bit easier to be able to see everything. I did highlight on there the 2 red lines. So the dark solid red line is approximately the property line. So everybody knows where the Seaport property ends and Boathouse Park property starts. The dashed line is that 30-foot access easement or right to use easement. And so that's where these 7 parking spaces share. They're technically on both sides of the property, but entirely within the access easement of the Seaport. So that on some level, the Seaport could build these and use these for their use, just as currently right now, that entire gravel driveway is entirely for Seaport use. But in this proposal, they're proposing to allow them to be shared use with both the Seaport and Boathouse Park. And then yep?
So during construction phase, will those 7 spaces be built?
Yes.
And how about to the north, those other 8 or those other ones?
No.
Boathouse.
That's Boathouse Park.
Approved.
So you'll pay.
There'll be a driveway in, the parking and the access to get in.
And you'll leave some
Everything to
fencing,
the left has.
The fencing goes away.
Well, there'll be no driveway.
There'll be no driveway. The current driveway will go to an asphalt driveway with some parking spaces in the driveway.
Okay. Yep. Thank you.
I just want to just clear something up for the record. Just Chad kept calling it an access easement. It's actually an easement for all purposes. So it's not just limited to access.
Right.
Just okay.
Thank you. Nope, perfect. So I guess we'll start with our site access. So this is the driveway. Again, it's using that easement area. were coming in and then driving through, having the valet drop off like we've talked about. The primary reason for this was for the safety of all users coming in. A lot of us, when we first started, expected that, a 4-leg intersection with adding a light here to the north laneway would come in and might be better. We found that was actually less safe because we all know how many people, visitors come to the Seaport. They all come driving down and they slow down and they look for where they can turn right to park on the Seaport property. And if this became a 4-legged intersection and a main drive into here, we would get a very high percentage of first-time visitors coming to the Seaport, thinking that was the entry to the Seaport, coming into what is really just a small valet drop-off for a hotel, getting stuck, having to turn around, get back out. It would add significant congestion to this location instead of simply serve the restaurant and the hotel. And so that's why the separation was made, to come through here, allow it to be far enough away from the intersection to come in, access through, drop off, and leave, and exit the site.
So actually, I know it's a little bit off base, but moving the house that was on the boathouse property to the north benefits your curb cut drive proposal?
It doesn't actually change it
Doesn't
either way.
matter,
No,
even if it was
no. And if you'd like, no.
I like to think that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we've all, having spent time here, see that intersection backed up all the way to the cemetery already.
In very limited events,
Well, or on a summer afternoon.
can be.
And it seems to me that your trade-off here is that you're going to make people in and out of your hotel cross a congested roadway just to get to the parking lot, for one thing. I'm not sure that the trade-off there makes any sense. You're going to have so many people
Well,
in that intersection trying to get across the road to the north parking lot, including your valets.
I will let Mark answer that. But if you're coming here and parking here and you're in the valet, if you're the customer, you're not going to be leaving and trying to get across and turn left. You're going to leave and go north or south.
Your car's going to have to be moved.
Your car will be moved. Yep.
Yeah.
And I'll let Mark go through it, but he's got all the DOT road intersection grades. And I will say that is, of all of them, that is the one that shows some backup is the leaving the site. Going to the left, yes, if you were leaving here, going to the left. But we expect, it's really not bad at all. It's not a very low grade. And if there's anybody that's going to be inconvenienced, it should be the people leaving the site, not anybody else out in the roadway. So that's why that was done. And we think it significantly improves pedestrian safety because we all know, like I said, 100% of the people walk across back and forth as it is currently. This will significantly reduce the amount of people that have to go back and forth. We still expect people can park, self-park, as we talked about in the north parking lot. We've created a better pedestrian experience as they come across the north laneway and come down and have a sidewalk all the way to the front door. It's handicap accessible at the front door, unlike Latitude currently, where you have to go around to the back of the building. So that's our basic access. As I kind of...
Quick question on the access here. Have you considered any kind of signage change for people trying to get out and make a left? Like after the valet drops their car off, they're leaving the establishment, they're going to make a left. Most people are going to be heading towards 95, right?
Could be, yeah.
Is there any consideration of, I don't know, flashing lights, something to let people know because they're going to be going across traffic? You've got the other people, the traffic backs up now.
Yeah, I'll let Mark answer that, but in his studies, and I'll speak a little bit for him, but his studies, there wasn't a significant backup in the turn lane to cause that to be a problem, to necessitate it. Again, the 27 rooms, the smaller restaurant, it is a reduced amount of people coming than what is currently there.
But you're also going to have events at that backyard, so you
Yep.
are going to have some,
Yep, there will be some.
good
Yep.
deal of traffic and events.
Yep. As I alluded to before, so this is the hotel location. This is what we're calling the guest suite and flexible space. That could be an area for bridal areas to get ready before weddings and things like that. And then this is a utility structure, so where our garbage and linens and things like that will be transferred back and forth. Instead of just putting a fenced area with some arborvitae around it, we built a building around it to dress it up quite a bit. And then, as I also mentioned, so this is the north laneway. It's currently permeable asphalt. We are expanding a little bit here and a little bit here to allow us to get the tractor trailers that currently come into Latitudes backed in a little bit, or not Latitudes, Thompson, backed in a little bit easier here. And then this area is our delivery receiving area for the hotel and restaurant. It is not a loading dock. It is just simply a man door at grade to be able to enter and go down into the basement for material handling.
There goes the level.
Correct. Yeah. And then along with that is those are the 4 bathroom facilities that are part of what we currently call the north heads that service anybody on Seaport grounds for bathrooms, as well as all the boaters that come and stay on the dock. We do have handicap ramps that go up and down both sides. There's a large terrace along the whole back side, or a large porch, I should say, excuse me, and then a couple terraces with a pool for the swimming down to the bottom.
Where's the new tented area?
The new what area?
Tented.
Tented. Oh, tent. So we have 2 small spaces. This is an area that can be tented, and this is a smaller area that could be tented.
The area closest to the water, how close is it? How close is it?
It fits almost exactly it fits a 60 by 40 tent, which is a little bit smaller than the current tent. It sits in the same proximity to the water as the current tent does.
There's some canopies?
There is a decorative canopy leading to the front door that you can see in the architectural illustrations.
Okay.
Yep. I will also point out public access to the shoreline. So I should have mentioned from the beginning, this is Boathouse Park, which we are also currently designing. We're showing it there because they are being designed somewhat concurrently because we know they're going on at the same time, so we've made them be able to function together. Associated with that is this boardwalk that comes down around the end, replaces a historical pier that was out there, comes back. The public will have access along through here into this current area, which right now has the dumpsters and trash compactors, all along this bulkhead, out through here, around to this area, and then this is now the new edge of the fence for the paid experience of the Seaport. So all of this becomes accessible if you came to the park, either via a dinghy or came to park, and parked in the parking lot, you could walk and have access to this area in the back of the restaurant.
So do you think people have picnics on that little piece of green coming across from the penthouse?
I expect if people come to have a picnic, they're probably going to have a picnic in the park. But they are welcome to come over here and hang out there and walk up to the restaurant and have a drink on the porch and walk back or enjoy their walk all the way up and down the river on the sidewalk and then come into the space. I'll also point out, because we worked on Coogan Farm, and you might have read in the papers, the Greenmanville Trail that they're trying to connect from Coogan Farm down into the Seaport and connect the history of where the farm used to be the food supply for where the shipyard is now. And so this will be part of that kind of walking experience that will link that history. But we think that's a significant improvement for public access right down to the bulkhead, all the way around to here. And then again, that's the portion of paid experience. All of these docks are existing docks. they're not proposed to be expanded. There will be a slight modification to the ramp here just so that you can come and dock at a dinghy dock and then get into the site, not be into the paid experience of the Seaport. I should point out, from a sustainability standpoint, the Seaport made a great investment in trying to make the Thompson building as sustainable as possible with full rainwater infiltration, geothermal heating, massive insulation. And this is now part of like the whole zone within the Seaport that's kind of their model of sustainability. And so they've required the developer to build to LEED standards. That's why we have the full rainwater harvesting. We have as much low impact pavement as we can. This entire driveway is a crushed stone surface with a support underneath of it, so it becomes permeable pavement as opposed to hard asphalt or concrete. And we did quite a bit of other permeable pavements as you go around the site as well, and tried to really stress low-impact design as much as we could. I think with that, is there anything I missed?
Well, you might want to mention the town engineer.
Oh, town engineer comments, sure. So I think you're aware, the town engineer, we don't have a current town engineer, but we did receive comments back from the reviewing engineers. They had 3 minor comments about all improvements along DOT, or along Route 27 have to be approved by DOT, which we will fully comply with. They requested to have a plan, so we showed everything with Boathouse Park attached, just because we thought it was in full disclosure and best looking forward. They want to see a plan without everything to the north, right? So just the driveway and the parking area coming in, so that's a pretty easy one. And then they also indicated that we have to comply with the WPCA letter, which we, of course, will do.
Does OSTA have to look at this plan?
What was that?
OSTA?
Yes, yeah, and I'll let Mark address that as well.
Just for my edification, that gray area down by the water, is that going to be like, is that the picnic area?
It's stone dust. It's, currently, there's a lot more, there's some brick paving, there's some grass patches in there. The existing flagpole stays and remains, but we've just increased the amount of stone dust so that it's a surface that we can maintain better.
What is that going to be used for, though? Is that?
It's part of the Seaport area, yeah.
Okay, it's not a specific picnic area,
No,
per
it's
se.
not a specific, it's just part of their grounds that they use, and that's an area that constantly gets kind of torn up from use, and so the best use was to do a stone dust.
Okay.
Any other questions for me at this point?
We'll get back to you if we need them.
Is there any access from the water? Or is that all just, is that all within the Seaport?
Nope, so this float, as I mentioned, so right now, the existing dock ramps up into the Seaport property.
Yeah.
So we'll probably reconfigure that ramp so that it can ramp up into this publicly available space, so that if you came by dinghy, you could get up there. And then this gate, which is currently almost right about in that location, there's a buzzer and a camera to the guard that's in the shack 24/7. And if you need in and out, you can get a wristband and buzz you through. But that's why this ramp probably gets reconfigured so that whole dock, it could be a dinghy dock to come to the restaurant.
And what would be the lighting around that?
All around what?
The dinghy dock, that whole?
There is very minor existing lighting out there, and we don't plan to add any additional.
Okay.
Anything else? All right. With that, I will turn it over to Bruce Binefield to talk about the architecture.
I'm Bruce Binefield from Binefield Architecture, located in Norwalk, Connecticut. We started our design process by studying the seaside resorts that once inhabited the coast with the goal of informing our design. The scale, spirit, rhythm of openings, and the wide verandas that typically wrapped the bases of those iconic structures are referenced in our architectural response. Mystic Seaport is one of the rare places where you can feel history. The Yankee knowledge, ingenuity, and spirit that gave life to this community 200 years ago is evidenced in the timber frames of the boats and utilitarian structures that were handcrafted there. We tailored our architectural vocabulary to fit with the distinct character of Mystic Seaport. The Seaport architecture speaks of industry and a spare, simple form-following function sensibility that characterized coastal Connecticut. This is a photo of the site from around 1900. Greenmanville Avenue is in the foreground. Where the, can you zoom in?
So I'll just point out, that's the pond next to the north parking lots. So the north parking lots are in this area right here. And this whole hill that you see is the rotten side of Mystic.
The three-story building, the three-story building blocking most of the view of the Stillman building is close to the proposed drop-off for the new hotel. Our planning approach is consistent with the historic precedent in that we are proposing a three-story building with smaller buildings facing the street. Here we go.
So that, just pointing out, this is the Stillman building that currently exists on site that we all know. The Thompson building is kind of right beside it. And then these houses are, of course, not there anymore.
The primary structure is set back 180 feet from the street. The placemaking is reinforced by two cottages, a gatehouse and garden shed that give the property the feeling of an estate. Verandas wrap around the front and back of the hotel, offering protection from the sun and rain and provide a classic seaside resort transitional space. The building is located to provide a great waterfront lawn suitable for large events and private gardens offering romantic wedding settings and lawn games. The lobby and restaurant have water views and adjacent covered verandas. The ballroom over on the left opens to the grand lawn facing the water and a private garden in the front yard. Back-of-house functions are segregated to enable efficient staffing. Mariner restrooms are provided to support the existing Seaport demand for showers and restroom facilities for boaters. On the two upper levels, we tried to get great water views from every room and come up with a very efficient layout of those rooms with the idea of minimizing both the total square footage of the building and also to do everything we could to keep the height as low as possible. The rooms are typically about 420 square feet in size.
How large are the windows?
Pardon?
How large are the windows?
The windows are approximately 8 feet wide and 8 feet high.
Oh, excuse me, what is turtle glass?
Turtle glass, so in the state of Florida, sea turtles, they've determined that sea turtles, when they nest, when their hatchlings are born, they are guided by moonlight back to the water and have found that light coming from adjacent buildings or any non-natural light can disorient the turtles and they never make the journey back to the sea. And therefore, the state of Florida has enacted regulations whereby any seaside buildings need to provide turtle glass, which means that only 40% of the total light within the inside of the building can make it through the glass to the outside.
Is it slightly non-reflective from the outside as well?
Yes, it's non-reflective from the outside also.
I never heard that term before.
And all the windows will be like that in the entire building?
All of the windows facing the water, both on the north side and on the west side.
Okay, thank you.
This is a roof plan with the area that's shaded in brown is actually was like a bathtub within the top of the roof that hides all of the mechanical condensers and rooftop equipment. So the building's been designed so that none of that equipment is visible from any of the four sides of the building. This is an existing view looking south from Boathouse Park. And this is the proposed view with the two-story cottage building in the foreground and the hotel behind it, and the Thompson Building in the distance to help orient you. The basic materials on the building are weathered cedar siding, and which is primarily in a vertical format, and cedar shingles, all which would be naturally weathered.
I went over the plans numerous times, and I can't find an overall length running north to south, say on the veranda on the west side.
I believe it's 160 feet, but
I'll put a scale on it.
Okay, thank you. Some of these things we didn't get into scale. Thank you.
So the architectural vocabulary is tailored to fit with the distinct historic character of Mystic, referencing the Seaport's boat sheds and utilitarian buildings. This is an existing view of the site.
So that's the square where the flagpole is.
Yeah, the gravel area.
Gravel, you can see how it looks currently.
And you can, with the Thompson Building off to the right. And next.
Can you go back one slide? That side. So it gets back to the windows, sorry. So we're looking at the building, the hotel, the portion of the hotel that's facing the parking lot, right, that has the jut out there. Those will have, no, so right there. Will those,
The north facade, yes.
that's the north side. What about,
And the ballroom is below that.
and the ballroom is below that, and you said that those windows would be on the north and west side. What about the south side?
On the south side, yes, facing towards the main portion of the Seaport, those large windows would also be.
So north, west, and south?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So the design references the seaside hotels with a large veranda and a rhythm of windows taking in the views over the Mystic River. The glazing on all the windows, as we mentioned, will be tinted to dramatically reduce the transmittance of light from the interior of the building at night. The roof is clad in standing seam metal, which will actually be a slightly darker color than the Thompson Building to, again, minimize any potential reflectivity of that surface. Diagonal lateral bracing is expressed on the water side of the structure as a way of celebrating this structural component and fitting the building into the Seaport's working waterfront. This is a proposed water view from the north, again with the Thompson Building in the background, and you can see that the back of this building is pretty much in line with the Thompson Building, and therefore, when you're on the back deck of the Thompson Building, you still have unobstructed views up the Mystic River from that point. This is existing view of latitude 41 as seen from the Rossi Pentway. And this is the proposed view from that point.
So one of the reasons we pushed it back so much from the road was to open up that visual appearance of the sky and the view out to the river.
Looks good.
Which we feel you can really see with the amount of sky left here versus how close to the road, even though Latitudes is a two-story building, it's closer and therefore its presence is taller than the three-story building pushed back from the road.
Do you have a view of the current building from the water side and the same argument? So now that's going to be closer to the water. It's actually taller, so you're blocking the view from the water side. Yeah.
So this is an existing view from the roof of the Rossi Mill, looking towards the south. And this is the proposed hotel as seen from that same vantage point. And here you can see how much the site opens up as you're heading south on Greenmanville Avenue. This is an existing view from across the river, from the Groton side. And that's proposed. So, yes, the building has a visual footprint from that area, but in our view, it fits in with the overall scale of the Seaport.
So that's Thompson, that's 3-story Stillman building, right on the water, right? There's Stillman's got about a 10-foot area of bulkhead between it and the water, currently right there in the hotel. And then you can see the mill in the background.
Right, so let me ask you, since you brought up the Stillman building, the dimensions of the Stillman building versus the 160, I think that's what you said, 160 feet of the proposed building, what's the difference?
I can measure plans, I don't have an answer off the top of my head. But
Okay.
I'll measure them.
Again, we're talking scale. If you bring up something that here's the scale, it's nice to know actually what the scale is. Is it 4 times bigger, 5 times bigger, 2 times bigger? Yep.
My rough answer would be 2 times bigger than the Stillman building. This is a view of the building from across the river at night. So that's a general overview of the architecture. I can either answer
Thank you.
questions or we
Any
can pass it on to
questions now?
traffic.
Yes, I have several more questions. I'm curious why the first floor is 15 feet tall. That's what the plan says? And then going up, it's 10 feet and 10 feet for the second and third floors?
So it's 15 feet from the floor to the floor above, and that allows for approximately 2.5 feet of structure in the ballroom area. Because those are relatively long spans, the structure has to be deeper there, and wanted to get a 12.5-foot tall ballroom space. This, which is a space that's not too dissimilar to the room that we're in, and the ceilings within this space are a little taller than what we're proposing.
Right. And how about why 10 feet on the other upper floors?
That's, again, 10 feet floor to floor, which will only yield a little, about an 8-foot 6-inch height within the guest rooms.
So I was thinking if you could reduce that just a little bit, the whole bulk of the building could just come down.
We've been very conscious of getting those inches out wherever we can. At the same time, it's a balance of that and the overall goal of making this a luxury resort hotel, in which we didn't want the guests to come in and say, why are the ceilings so low? So it's a balance that we struggled with.
And then thank you, on the exterior, you show as if some of the windows might have sliding doors. Is that more of a, there's some rails up above the windows as if there was sliding.
Those are not going to be opening, no.
So it's more of a decorative to break up.
Yes.
And did you happen to see the letter from the town of Groton talking about they liked how the east side is broken up versus the west side that isn't?
I did not get an opportunity to see that letter.
Or comment?
John Casey did.
As an architect, I was just curious if there was any way you could maybe.
Well, in looking at what kind of image this building should have on the waterfront, we, as I started with the presentation, we really took our cues from the seaside hotels. There was a hotel on Mystic Island initially, and those were bold structures in the on the coastal landscape, and they were not broken up in the way that people from Groton might have asked for this building to be. So we were following that historic precedent, not knowing what kind of interest the town of Groton might have on this matter.
Thank you.
Do you want us to read that into the, it's in the record? You're all set? Okay. Oh, yeah, just while we're on the concept, the topic of architectural review, just for the record, I'm sure you've all seen it on the commission, how your own architectural design review board gave this a favorable review.
Yep.
And
Duly noted. Yep.
right. And I happened to be in Groton by myself without the support of Bruce, who I really could have used when they were talking about breaking up the mass. And as I understand it, we've broken up the mass on the western facade.
On the eastern, right. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions at this time? Thank you.
So I have a couple of questions. So it's about the lighting, which I keep on honing in on. I just want to make sure, because this is so close to the water, and you know how when fog, and when we get the fog, the lighting really is illuminated even more, right, because of the water. So has all of the lighting been designed with that in mind? Are there any spotlights coming from the buildings? Are there any, is everything fully shielded? Is there, you know, can you just talk a little bit more about the lighting on the proposed?
Chad had more to do with the exterior lighting than we did, but there was, the entire design team had a sensitivity to the interest in not lighting and not making a major footprint on the night sky and keeping the lighting levels as low as they could be and still being able to serve the functions that were needed, which are they're code-related lighting levels for safety from parking lots and just being able to walk around a building. But all of the fixtures are shielded in such a way that any lighting overflow has been minimized, and that goes into the going beyond the turtle glass on the interior. The lighting is only as bright as it needs to be to provide basic illumination within the rooms.
Okay, all right, good. Well, I think the turtle glass is a great idea, so.
Thank you.
With that, we'll turn to our traffic engineer. Fewest slides, but
Thank you, and good evening. I'm Mark Vertucci. I'm a senior transportation engineer and associate at Fuss & O'Neill, 146 Hartford Road in Manchester. also a registered professional engineer and a professional traffic operations engineer as well. Our firm did prepare a traffic impact study for this development, so I did want to just briefly describe our findings for you here tonight. Up on the screen here is just a site location figure just to orient you. You know, the site, as you're aware, is located on the west side of Route 27, opposite Rossi Pentway. You can see here the proximity to the north to I-95 and Coogan Boulevard. Part of this study, we really focused on the intersection of 27 at the Rossi Pentway and then also at the proposed Site Drive intersection just off to the north. We did conduct new traffic counts at our study intersection in January of this year during the peak periods. The counts indicated the morning peak hour and the weekday was 7:30 to 8:30. The afternoon peak hour was 4:30 to 5:30, and the Saturday midday peak hour was 11:45 to 12:45. So we did analyze those peak hours for impacts. Now, obviously, this is not the ideal time of year to be doing a traffic study, be doing traffic counts out there. So what we did is we contacted the DOT for a seasonal adjustment factor. They did have counts available at the Route 27 at Coogan Boulevard intersection off to the north that were done during the peak summer tourist time period. So what we did is we went out and we counted that intersection as well, compared the two counts, and then got the adjustment factor. So the counts were actually 22% higher. The DOT counts were. So we in turn bumped our counts up by that same adjustment, that 22% seasonal adjustment factor.
Excuse me, so it's just 22% higher in June or July?
Correct, yeah.
22%?
It was 22% at the Coogan
Than
Boulevard.
January.
Correct. Yeah. Now, we also, this development, the build year is expected to be, well, conservatively, at least a year out. So we also grew our counts by a growth factor which was 0.6% for 1 year. That growth factor was supplied to us by the DOT Planning Division. So that's just to account for normal traffic growth in the study area and some of the other background developments. There's a hotel to the north that was recently approved and a couple of residential units down towards the village. So that just accounts for that type of increase in traffic that we expect to see in our background condition as well.
Can I just stop you?
Sure.
When you went to the state and you got the DOT, it was for the intersection, the turnoff of Route 27 to Coogan Boulevard? That's what the state gave you at peak times? And it was
correct.
22%?
Yep. All movements at the intersection of Route 27 at Coogan. They also had the 95 ramps. There had been a traffic study done in that area during the peak period, so they had that data available. Unfortunately, they didn't have Rossi Pentway, so we went out and counted it, and then we adjusted it by the same factor.
And when were those numbers from?
The DOT
what year?
counts, they were, it was either last year or the year before. It was recent.
Recent, okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
definitely. Now, as far as the traffic generation from our development, we utilized rates in the Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation manual. So this is an industry-accepted resource for determining traffic generation for various land uses. So we utilized the quality restaurant and the hotel land use there. And, the key point here is that, as Chad had presented, the restaurant and the banquet use are smaller in the proposed condition than they are in the existing, so we're actually have a fairly substantial net reduction in traffic from those uses. And then there's a small increase from the hotel use, which isn't obviously there today. So when you add it all up, the net change in trips from this site, there was an increase of 12 trips in the morning peak hour, 7 trips in the afternoon peak hour, and 12 trips in the Saturday peak hour. So is almost a wash. It was a very de minimis increase in trips. We went ahead, we did conduct a capacity analysis at our study intersections at Rossi Pentway, and then also the proposed site driveway as well. When we conduct an analysis at these intersections, our program calculates what's called a level of service, which is a measure of delay at the intersection. The level of service is rated on a report card type scale of A to F. So A is a condition of very little delay, it's efficient operations, whereas a level of service F, significant delay, higher driver frustration. Typically, the DOT will consider a level of service D or better as being an acceptable operation. So our analysis indicated that the signalized intersection at Rossi Pentway, the intersection's operating actually very efficiently at level service A in the weekday morning and afternoon peak hours, and it was a level service B in the Saturday peak hour, and there was no change in level of service as a result of the minor increase in trips that we had. At the site driveway itself, the turns in, so heading northbound on Route 27 and making a left turn in. Yeah, so if you're heading northbound on 27, you're making a left in. That movement is an efficient level of service A operation. And then coming out of the driveway here and making a turn in either direction, the level of service was B, which is efficient morning peak hour. It was C in the afternoon peak hour. And it was level service D in the Saturday peak hour. So there was a bit more.
How long a wait do you call that?
Level service D, on average, you're looking at, average vehicle is, 30, 40 second type wait there.
I live around the Mystic area, and I have a friend in Pleasant Street, and I come out Pleasant Street in the summer. And if I want to take a left-hand turn, sometimes you wait 10 minutes.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking, you have a lot of traffic, you got this whole hotel,
I mean,
that's a restaurant. That's a lot of people trying to make left and right.
You do have to remember too, you have our valet use, which Chad presented, is going to be a right in and a right out. So those people, there's half your trips out of that driveway are valet. They're not making a left turn.
Okay, but for the other half of my concern is people who are unfamiliar with right, most of them would be going back out to 95, okay? And I'm concerned too that where the boathouse, you have that the boathouse lot right there. So I can see people getting confused, turning in there, going around, it seems like there's a lot going on.
Right now, that's not part of this application, so we're only focusing. And I haven't done a study on that. I only looked at the one intersection for this part.
Because weekends, believe me, on the summer, you stated on page 9, there's a short queue distance, I believe.
Yeah, there is.
I've seen it queued up past the cemetery, southbound on 27. So if a valet is trying to make a right-hand turn and then a left-hand turn immediately to get into the north parking lot, good luck, pal.
Well,
The weave is going to be very tough, coming out.
Is there any way of,
Those valet guys.
is there any way of having a trip light on that? So or coordinate with the other light down there?
Well, this is not signalized here.
I know, but the crosswalk is signalized. Could you have them coordinated somehow together with another light there, or?
This is too close to add another traffic signal. The DOT wouldn't allow that based on the proximity.
We'll put them together?
No, they wouldn't. And there's also not enough, the volume's so small coming out of here. Yeah, it wouldn't meet the warrants from the volumes. You also have to remember too, that only people using this are valet. All the self-parkers are going to be parking here and walking across the street.
Yeah. All the boathouse people eventually.
One other thing to note as well, restaurant use. We did analyze the commuter peak hour here, but the restaurant use peaks later. You're looking at a 7:30 p.m. Peak. So a lot of the people, they're leaving the restaurant in the evening and making a left turn out. The background traffic on Route 27 is substantially lower around 7:30 than it is around 5 o'clock at night. So you do have to remember that also. That's an important point here.
But lining up the driveway from the hotel with the intersection, to see if it could be a leg on the intersection?
This one here?
Because then you could allocate time to it, and the left turns and the direct movement across to the north parking lot.
Yeah,
I know it's
but
a major change.
right.
I'm not trying to change the site alignment or the
Well-
site arrangement on you at this point in the project, but that would address all of these issues of the dog leg
Right.
driveway.
Well, we did, this is a substantial separation. It's about 200 feet, I believe, is the separation here. So we did look at this closely. We looked at the average queue here is, on a normal time, is about 120 feet. I know it does get longer at times, but when this signal turns green, that queue clears, and then people have the ability to make that turn out. We
You're
looked
looking
at,
for substantial gaps in the traffic stream across 2 lanes to make the left turn. So,
well, it's kind of,
those of us that live in town and are familiar
Yeah.
with this, the queuing, I think, is and I trust your study, I'm certainly not questioning that. But can the queuing be modeled? Can it
we do,
actually
our program does that, yes. It's a capacity analysis.
Can you show us that?
I don't have it with me now, but on a laptop, I could.
The results are. That would have been
Yeah.
the queuing analysis would be very helpful because it shows the arriving and departing
Yeah.
vehicles and the turning movements. And
The
I think if that queuing analysis does in fact indicate a substantive or a level of service C, the issue's addressed, but it would be interesting to see that queuing.
There are queue tables in the study.
I've seen those. It's
Okay.
not the same as the moving analysis.
Oh, see, you're
on the
talking
screen.
about a visualization, a model, right? But the queues are in there, and like I said, 120 feet is that average queue, so it doesn't quite get back there. When it does, if you have platoons in a very peak condition, it will obstruct it, but when the signal goes green, that queue clears and enables the vehicle to turn left out. You actually do get gaps in the traffic when the signal clears. When the Rossi Pentway goes, 27 traffic is stopped, and you get those breaks in the traffic.
Can you just have a right turn only? We don't give a damn where they end up, as long as you just keep going.
Well, let me also, I was going to mention this later, but I'll mention it now. This is a revision to the whole Seaport site. So we have to go to the State Traffic Administration. It's a change in use for a development that has greater than 100,000 square feet of development. So we will be going into OSA, the State Traffic Administration, for a review. We also have to go into the District 2 office for an encroachment permit review. We have work in the state right-of-way here that we have to do. So we have both of the DOT offices will be looking at this, and obviously it's a state road. So they will be reviewing our analysis and the queues and the level of service, and they will certainly be commenting on this as well. I don't know if that gives you a level of comfort, but they'll be reviewing this traffic study in detail. I just want to hit on 2 other items here. Mr. Sheehan had mentioned sight lines. We did measure intersection sight distances coming out of here, looking in the left and the right direction. And in the existing condition, there is some vegetation and some obstruction there that blocks the sight line, but in the proposed condition, this will all be cleared out, regraded, and the vegetation is set well back here. So in the proposed condition, the sight distance will exceed the DOT criteria for safe egress, and the sight distance looking to the left or off to the north is also sufficient based on DOT standards. We did review crash data as well. We looked at the latest 3 years of available data from the Yukon Crash Repository. The latest 3 years of data was available was 2016 to 2018, and in that period, there were only 2 crashes along the site frontage in those 3 years. There was no pattern of crashes identified. Now, I am aware, subsequent to that period, there was a fatality, unfortunately, at this intersection. But I do understand it was alcohol-related. So it was not anything, it was not a crash that would indicate a certain pattern at the intersection that we would be concerned about, or or a design flaw with the intersection that we would need to go out there and correct. So overall, the crash history here was fairly sparse, with only 2 in those 3 years, and then the one last year as well.
But didn't you say one of the primary reasons you're moving the site back towards the water was so that you could decrease any safety risk of people crossing the street, so you could have this valet parking and everything? And what you're just saying is that there really isn't a safety risk based on the data, from a crash perspective or anything else?
Correct.
So it's a
There's
perceived risk, but there has been no evidence of risk.
Correct. There's a substantial volume of pedestrian traffic already crossing at this intersection, and other than the tragedy that occurred, there has not been any pedestrian crashes here at this intersection in the history that we looked at.
Okay.
There is an exclusive pedestrian phase with this signal, so somebody will push, there'll be a push button there, they can press it, and the signal lights all go red to allow all the traffic to stop and the pedestrian to be able to cross here. So, that will be maintained in the proposed condition, and the DOT is also planning some signal upgrades at this location as well as at the South Seaport lot. They're going to be upgrading some of the signal equipment and the pedestrian ramps as well, some of the signal heads, and putting reflective back plates on the signal heads. So that will provide some safer operation as well, not only for vehicles, but also the pedestrians crossing there.
I'm sure they'll be adding probably 50-plus signs, too.
I hope not. That's really all I had. Again, the conclusion of our traffic study, very de minimis increase in traffic when you compare the before versus after as far as the number of trips. Our only recommendation was the site distance improvements, which, with the site construction, those will be getting made here to correct that existing site distance problem out there. With that, I can take any other questions. I know Mr. Sheen had mentioned something earlier about the valet queuing, which I did not hit on, but there are 8 spaces here for queuing storage for vehicles, and should that back up beyond that, there would be I'd say probably 5 or 6 additional storage spaces along this entrance drive. I wouldn't think it would ever get to the point where we'd have that many vehicles waiting for the valet. And you're going to have the runners, the valet staff, who will be checking these cars in and bringing them out at a fairly consistent rate as they're coming in.
So again, your analysis of that driveway, the driveway that the valet would depart from in the eastbound direction, your analysis of that movement is level of service what again?
It was B during the morning peak hour, C in the weekday afternoon peak hour, and D in the Saturday midday peak hour. That's correct.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Just when do most people check in and out of a hotel?
I would say, mostly probably mid to late morning they're checking out, and then
on
they're checking in
Saturdays?
late afternoon.
And on Saturdays?
Late in the day check-ins and the midday leaving, which works with peak flow of the road.
But typically on the weekend?
Every day.
All week long. I mean, hopefully it's 7 days a week. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other? Okay, thank you. I think John may have a few words to wrap up, and I think that's...
Right, well, just while you're here,
Yeah.
but your conclusion is that the
Sure.
change in use will not, the use of Route 27, changing to a hotel or changing to this type of use is, the conclusion is...
Yeah, the conclusion is the proposal will not have a significant impact to traffic operations here on Route 27. It's, from a traffic generation standpoint, it's almost a wash with what the site is currently generating.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Is that it, John?
That's, yes, Mr. Chairman, that's pretty much it. Your, your town planner pointed out that you have to find the application consistent and compliant with the plan of conservation and development. In his report, he listed a number of policies that he thought was applicable and that would be benefited, or we would be in compliance with those policies. We agree with that analysis. You know, as a simple, basic matter, we think this is a good project for the town when it comes to economic development, preservation of, and growth of if not the major tourist attraction here in town, and possibly, you know, what some people consider to be the heart of town when they think of Mystic. You've heard how it's intended to support and continue to support the evolution of the Seaport so it can continue to have that impact. If it wasn't for projects like the Thompson Building, we wouldn't have had 91,000 people here in town. That's the type of change that we need, positive change. We know anyone involved in land use knows that change is hard for some people, but change is inevitable. It has to come. And I think especially when change is as well considered and thought out as what's proposed here, we always can pick it apart. But in the end, I think when you look at this application, you'll find that it has been put together in a very thoughtful way to provide a use that will be beneficial to the community, for boaters, increased number of boaters coming to the area. It's designed to work with a town park. It's designed to provide more opportunity for people to come to the town and to really enjoy and experience Mystic. I'll note, this is going a little bit sideways, we have a letter from the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. You may recall that when we came here in the summer, they sent in a letter that listed a lot of comments, a lot of concerns, really, which I think were out of place because we didn't provide you with a full application. I think they were speculating about a lot of the concerns. So the new letter that just came in this afternoon really doesn't have those same concerns. It mentions really this concept of, you know, is it appropriate, or, you know, that the commission should consider whether this will have a negative effect on future water-dependent uses. And I think as we've shown you this evening, the water-dependent uses on this section of the Seaport, and that's only when you focus on this section of the Seaport, you can't separate it from the Seaport in the big scheme of things. The Seaport is a water-dependent use. It wouldn't be there if it wasn't on the Mystic River. But the water-dependent use specifically here will stay exactly the same. The docks are going to stay the same. The access to or from the water will stay the same. The access will actually improve because of the proposal for the public access walkway, which will allow people, as Chad said, to come from the park. They can walk around the site, around the bulkhead, and that's a marked improvement from currently, from that corner where the dumpsters and the trash compactor is. We think that's a huge benefit to the community. The other point in the DEP letter, whether this would have a negative possible impact on future water-dependent uses, is we're really not taking away a water-dependent use. We're exchanging one existing non-water-dependent use for another. But as Steve said, this is all part of the Seaport, how it has to work together. We need restaurants. We need facilities for its visitors. So we don't think this runs afoul of the Coastal Management Act policies. Thank you. As possibly suggested by DEEP. And I don't even want to put too many words in their mouth because it's not like they came out and said this was inconsistent. So I don't want to go too far, but maybe just point out some of the things, some of the obvious things as to the fact this is in a flood zone. It's in a flood zone. We can't change that. There's no other place on the property to put this. And as we've discussed, it's been carefully designed. The floors where the guests will be will be above base flood elevation, so it actually improves the or I should say, it's more compliant with the Coastal Management Act policy that says you need to manage coastal hazard areas so as to ensure development proceeds in a manner that hazards to life and property are minimized. So clearly, we're minimizing the chance of a hazard to property because we're getting rid of an old building that floods already, that's a risk of flooding, to a brand new building that's going to be dry flood proofed in its basement and all its other floors above the base flood elevation. So from a flood management point of view, we think this is clearly a win-win. That was noted in your ZEO's comments, who said it would be a benefit to the town's FEMA compliance. The other point that was in the letter, and it's in your staff's report as well, is about contingency plans. When a large storm is forecast, and this relates to the idea, are we increasing a risk to life by having a hotel in a flood zone where there was not a hotel in the past? In general, your zoning regulations, the Coastal Management Act does not prohibit residential uses in a flood zone. That's why we have FEMA building rules, construction rules, to minimize the risk and to manage the risk, and that's exactly what's going on here. But to the extent that this is a hotel, it's not someone's residence, no one has all their worldly possessions, they're not going to try to ride out the storm. If a storm is predicted, we expect hotel guests will go home. They'll go somewhere out of harm's way. I will note as a footnote, though, that Steve White always likes to tell me whenever I say that, if you look in the river when a storm is forecast, you will see a number of boats because it actually is a port in the storm, literally. But for a hotel, we understand that hotel users will mostly go home. They'll go somewhere out of the path of a storm. But to the extent, as DEP suggested, and as we discussed with Keith, we understand the town's emergency management plan is being updated. To the extent there's plans for evacuating hotel guests, we are all in favor of that.
A question on that point. As I understand it, and police have come to my door to tell us to evacuate, it's a matter of choice for residents. Is it also a matter of a choice for hotel guests?
I don't think it is, and maybe Charles or someone. I think like any business operator, if you could just say we're closed. We are closed. We apologize for any inconvenience.
But you can't call the bride and say, no wedding this afternoon because of the weather.
Well, hopefully
but no, it's funny, but it's not. We need to have some assurance, I think, if we were to accept this, that there's a very positive plan in place for clearing the building out.
Yeah.
You'll recall you may or may not recall, but this is also an issue with the proposed hotel downtown. And, we didn't get far enough to get to an evacuation plan, but I think it wouldn't be unreasonable for the town to request a pretty ironclad evacuation plan so that we can turn to FEMA and DEP and say we're doing everything we can here.
Understood. And so I actually looked, because from my experience living here in town for almost over 20 years, I thought of the Whalers Inn when it expanded in a flood zone. And I don't know why, but there was actually no coastal area site plan required for that. So these issues that you would think would have been handled at that time and with that
We're getting
development
smarter.
didn't come up. So we didn't have I was looking for sort of a precedent. But what we do have at the Seaport that most places don't have is they already have their own emergency management plan that covers all their buildings, their archives, everything that they need to protect. All the people, sorry. People first, but collections later, very valuable things. So they have a full emergency management plan, and we
Just
were
add
talking
this
this
to
evening,
it.
Steve can incorporate, this hotel into that plan quite easily.
Well, that brings up the question, who owns the building?
My understanding, it's the Seaport's property. There's going to be a lease of the building, and lease of the land, sorry, I just misspoke. And then the building will be owned by Greenwich Hospitality.
Gardner, you have a question? Thank you, John. My watch says exercise, so I gotta stretch for 5 minutes. I want to take a 5-minute break.
Thank you. Thank you for your public service. I spent 10 years in local government, and it's hard. Sorry. So I take it you heard what I just said. Oh. So anyway, I'm Tony Sheridan. I'm President and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce of Eastern Connecticut. And like our sister chamber in Mystic, we are heavily engaged in tourism. And quite frankly, I think I'm here to support the zone change. All venues have to refresh themselves. And if you don't, you become stale. And the record so far with the Seaport is excellent. The beautiful building out front, it catches everyone's eye. And the most recent display that was in their art display was on national news. And that's what we need for tourism. If we don't continue to work in that direction and constantly upgrade our facilities, we're going to get in trouble. So I support the proposed change, and as I said, I'm particularly supportive of the boutique hotel. I think that's going to add significantly to the quality of the venues in Eastern Connecticut. Connecticut is up against the wall when it comes to tourism. Our contiguous states spend approximately $100 million to advertise for tourists. Connecticut spends $4.2 million. Out of that $4.2 million, Eastern Connecticut, the 42 towns, have 400,000 annually. It's ridiculous. So why am I telling you that? I'm telling you because if we don't constantly upgrade our facilities, if we don't constantly look for new ways to attract tourists, we really will get stale and we will lose our share of the market. So I admire what the Seaport has done so far, and this plan, as I sat here listening to it this evening, it sounds like another very thoughtful, tasteful proposal that, when developed, it will really add significantly to the quality of the tourists that we'll attract to this area. Again, thank you for your time, and I'm always happy to answer questions. I think you probably could reach me over the phone or anything else. Courtney knows where I am.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Peggy Roberts? That's Christian Regan.
Yeah, Peggy went home sick.
Oh.
So I'm substituting for Peggy. So she's the president of the Chamber of Mystic Chamber of Commerce. She is in support of the project because it's beautiful, well-planned. It fills a need for the rooms of high quality on the water. And also the setback is not as imposing, and it's safe to access from the road. It's more attractive. So that's what Peggy had on her notes. So I think I'm next.
Yeah, you are.
All right.
Brought you off.
Well, I live on Finley Way as a resident and also on Mystic Village. I lived in that neighborhood on Seaport Heights, and I was there for the 90s and probably, half of the 2000. I think I moved out of there in 2008. And if you recall, if you guys walk those streets, where that house, where the boathouse is going to go, I used to run marathons, and so I would run down the sidewalks, and it wasn't well kept. It was overgrowth. Town didn't do anything about it. If I was running on that sidewalk, somebody's coming the opposite direction, I had to go out in 27. So it was dangerous. I think as a lifelong resident, I am happy to see this getting cleaned up, because that is the first thing that you see when you come down 27 before you get to the Seaport. I think it's going to be a tremendous, I want to applaud Steve White and the Seaport and Mr. Mallory of regards to having this vision and implementing something that we can be proud of. I mean, 27 rooms is not a lot of rooms. And I think they kind of scaled it down, and I think they're going to do a great job with it. If you talk about access coming out on 27 rooms, they're going to be checking out before 11 o'clock in the morning. I don't see a lot of times where it's backed up 10, 11 o'clock unless there's an event going on. And if they're checking in, it's usually 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's not going to be as big of a burden that you guys are thinking it's going to be. I don't think it will be. Obviously, if you're locals, you know where the side streets are to get out and go on the back roads. You don't have to go on 27. So, as a tourist, well, they have to stick in the traffic for a bit. For us, were you inconvenienced for 5, 10 minutes? Well, so be it. You just didn't plan it well. But I think overall, I think this is a great attractive addition to Mystic. And I think the need that we have for a high-end boutique hotel is definitely a need. That's what, because 54% of our customers that come to Connecticut are couples. And that's going to be a very attractive venue for them to go to. What I like about it, too, is you don't have decks off the rooms. So the residents across the river can't complain that it's going to be too loud, because they're going to be in their rooms with no access to go out onto a deck. So I think that's not going to be, I think it's a non-issue. And I think they've planned it really well. So I fully 100% in support of it, and my mother is also, Joyce Resnikoff. Okay.
Dave
Thank you.
Hammond?
Good evening. Dave Hammond. I'm the chair of the Economic Development Commission. I'm a resident of Pawcatuck. In your package, in your meeting report, you will have seen a letter of support that the Economic Development Commission supplied in favor of this zone change in support of the development by the Seaport. I won't go into detail, but just the highlights are that there is increased, from an economic point of view, there is increased revenues, not only tax revenues for the town, but also sales. It's a job generator, and I think most importantly, as mentioned by the applicants, is the local multiplier for businesses within the town. Anybody that went to the Turner exhibit, it was really wonderful. I can't wait to go to the next exhibit that they bring into the Thompson building. So just kind of in summary and in general, as you guys know, the EDC breaks down the Stonington economy into various economic sectors, and tourism is a major economic component of Stonington's economy. And the Seaport is nationally or internationally recognized and is really a jewel in Stonington's crown. So the EDC supports the Seaport plans to continue to evolve and sustain success, and I hope you'll support it as well. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak in favor?
Good evening, Lisa Kanicki, 15 Renee Drive in Stonington, and also president of the Ocean Community Chamber of Commerce. We often hear less is more, and this is certainly an example of that. This boutique hotel, while smaller in room count than many of the other properties in the town, will offer a very sophisticated design and a unique visitor experience in our town. Boutique hotels are known to draw folks with a higher disposable income, and that, of course, will affect all of the other restaurants and attractions in our community. We fully support the zone change application, and thank you for your thoughtful consideration of their excellent presentation this evening.
Thank you. Anyone else? James Tennant.
Good evening. I'm here to speak against the proposal, really for two reasons. It's an increase in commercialization in my immediate area. I'm in Hinckley Street. I've owned property there for 35 years, Hinckley and Rossi. Those two properties abut the Seaport. The commercialism I'm concerned about, and also the traffic. I listened to the traffic engineer, and there were quite a few things that I really couldn't agree with. Number one is that that intersection is rated as an A or B, producing very little or no frustration for the drivers that have to go through those intersections. Well, I'm here to say that that's really not the case. As you all know, you live in the area, and we all get frustrated. And this project is going to add one more curb cut. When the boathouse comes in, there'll be a second curb cut, all trying to get into that congested area. I don't know what the answer is, but to add more traffic and more curb cuts just seems to compound the problem even more. If a roundabout or something like that could be used to alleviate some of that stress, maybe that's the way to go. But as the project laid out in its present form, I don't think it's going to help that intersection or that traffic on Route 27. Let's see. I kind of threw some notes together, so I'll just try to. Oh, yeah, and the traffic engineer talked about comparing his January survey with, I guess, what he imagines to be only a 20% increase in summer traffic. Seems to me that just shows that the traffic study is really way off base. Only a 20% increase from January to the summer is way off. Oh, and just to add just one other thing, I guess. The Seaport is planning to lease their land to a private developer. I'm wondering if that's really the way we want the Seaport to operate. Are the Seaport going to continue to do this going out into the future? And if they do, what other things will they be planning, and how will that affect the neighborhoods that surround it? Those are my concerns. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else in opposition? Rick Newton, general comment?
Rick Newton, 32 Meadowbrook Lane, Mystic. I'm also chair of the Climate Change Task Force, but speaking as a private citizen because applications don't come before the task force. I have two general comments. The first, I directed you to the DEP letter, second page, first paragraph, last sentence. It states that in order to be consistent with the Coastal Management Act, town needs to develop a flood contingency plan. And it ends as, and documents dry egress from the building during a 100-year storm event. I don't believe that's possible. Looking at the Yukon Circa mapping portal, Yukon Circa is the outfit over at Avery Point that develops the sea level rise for the state of Connecticut. They have a mapping portal. They have 3 different boxes you can check, and I can give you these maps or these pictures. 100-year flood with no sea level rise, 100-year flood with 1 foot of sea level rise, and 100-year flood with 2 feet of sea level rise. In all 3 cases, that area is flooded. And even if they were able to get out of the Seaport property, both north and south on 27, there are areas that will flood. Now, I don't know how much, it doesn't say how deep that flood will be, but it will flood. So in order to comply with what the DEP wants there, I don't see how it's possible. The second thing is not specific to this application, but it's in general the applications. You hear a lot of talk about the capacity of the water filtration plant in Mystic. Nobody ever talks about the capacity of the Mystic Reservoir. You guys, the commission in the town has added a lot of high volume users. And I would think that you would want to know what the capacity of the reservoir is in the event of a drought, because eventually we're going to have another drought. We had one in August of 2018. If you recall, the upper level reservoir was empty. The report that they give to the state showed that the reservoir was at 37% capacity in August of 2018. And now we've added Perkins Farm, we've added Hartford Healthcare, expanded Mystic Aquarium, Masonic Care, bunch of restaurants. So, eventually you're going to run out of water. What are you going to do then? Thank you.
Thank you. James Short.
Hi, I'm James Short. I live on Dennison Avenue. I've been living there for over 45 years. And the only thing that I want to speak to here on this project is the access. This has to do with traffic flow on Route 27. And you have to look at the big picture on what's been going on with Route 27 over the past 10, 15 years between Mystic Seaport and Elm Grove Cemetery. We had the old Coogan Farm, which is now Nature Center, added curb cuts there, put a parking lot in. It's a nice place, beautiful buildings inside. Then we put a daycare center in, curb cut there. The Seaview Snack Bar is really doing good business, nice place. Then Kitchen Little got converted to an ice cream shop, changed from mostly morning traffic to afternoon traffic. And all that stuff is causing a lot of left turn problems out there. As people, the visitors to this town, try to leave at the end of the day, they're not too conducive to people trying to get out of the ice cream shop and make a left turn to get on 95. They've already been waiting 15 minutes to get on 95. So you see the people at the ice cream shop to get a little more, let me show them how badly I want to get out, and their car starts to creep out into the street. All you got to do is go up there in the summer and get an ice cream, you'll see it. Now this here has to be looked at in relationship with the boathouse project. I don't like that access coming out there. It's only 3 car lengths from the traffic light. They ought to swing that access so that it comes out under the traffic light, and if people can't figure out where to park, put up a damn sign so that they'll go to the parking lot and not come up there and have to turn around. But even if they do, they've got traffic light control to get them back out into 27 and across to the parking lot. They don't come out up there and in 3 car lengths have to shift left in order to get through the light. And if they can't shift left, they're stuck in the right lane, which is trying to get me home, then they're going to stop in the right lane. and wait for the left lane to clear out so they can get over. It's just not a good arrangement, and it doesn't make sense. It looks nice. It's very pretty. The whole project is, I like the hotel. I think it's really, I have no problem with that at all. But we're really messing with traffic, and we're irritating not only the people that live down in that area, we're irritating the visitors that come in here and spend a lot of money. So I think that you need to try and get these people interested in swinging that the other way and coming out on that perfectly good road they've got that lines up right with that traffic light and control that traffic that way. The other aspect of that is the boathouse thing. I was at the boathouse meeting yesterday to listen to their side of the thing. You really have to look at the whole picture. You know, they're trying to put parallel parking on Route 27 right in front of the boathouse project. That's also a bad idea, but I don't want to go into that here. But we just keep doing these little, well, we just do this, and, you know, we've done a survey, and it doesn't look like it's going to be a big problem. But when you add all that up, it is a problem, and it's an irritation, and it's causing accidents as people start to get antsy because they're tired of waiting. Now, like I say, I've been living on that road for 45 years. I know when that road's going to be full, and if I decide to take it, I turn on the music and sit there and I put a coffee in the car and away I go. You know, I'll get to Walmart sooner or later. But not everybody's like that. The tourists in particular, the visitors, they're tired at the end of the day. They don't know. And as far as back roads, alternate routes are lousy. You know, 27, you got to either go around through that snaky road there by Pequot Seaport and out up where Jerry Brown, or all the way up Route 1 and to Mystic. You're really kind of stuck when you live down in that area and you want to get out to I-95. So that's my only comment on this whole thing. I know it looks nice, but it doesn't work well. It doesn't work well for the people that live down there, pay taxes there, and put up with all that stuff, and try to give the visitors nice guidance when they're lost. You know, and it doesn't work well for the visitors.
Thank you. June Strunk?
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to talk. June Strunk, 45 New London Turnpike, Board of Selectmen, and liaison to the Planning and Zoning. So I know the comments that I'm going to make are late in the game because this application's been before you for a while, but you know, understand that your current Board of Selectmen's only been in office since mid-November. And the only comments from the town are from the town attorney from 2017. And I'm actually just asking that you consider the incredible plans that are planned for the Boathouse Park. It's not just a park, it's a rowing center. There's maybe 60 rowing machines that are being planned for the building. The crew team's going to be practicing there. If you go past the old district office in Old Mystic in the afternoon, the crew team's there now. Between the students and the coaches, there's about 30 cars. So there's a lot of traffic that's going to be going on in that area, and it's not part of this. So actually the other person who just spoke said, I don't know if looking at, as you look at the plans, you know, going out towards the right by the light has been considered. But just if you could just get some more information from the Boathouse Park so that you can decide on additional signage for directing traffic, that's all I want you to consider. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from general comments? Time for rebuttal, if they'd like.
So again, for the record, John Casey on behalf of the applicants. Give us a minute while we get settled in here. Most of the comments concern parking, so I will turn it over to Mark and Chad. I'll just note a couple of things, just sort of some factual predicates. There was a comment about more curb cuts on Route 27, and actually, that's not the case. So the access drive that's on the easement to the north of the Seaport property, that's going to be where the cars come in and out, that's already used as a driveway. So trucks making deliveries, garbage trucks, linen trucks, already come in and out of that driveway onto Route 27 currently. They make rights, they make lefts, and so there's already interface, I don't know if that's the right term, at that point. So that's not a new curb cut. And while the Boathouse Park isn't part of this project, I've learned from Chad that actually there's currently 4, if you include the easement area, there's currently 4 curb cuts on the town property. When the development is complete, including the Boathouse Park, there will only be 2. So there's actually going to be a net decrease in curb cuts along Route 27. So there actually could have been the possibility of a lot more traffic in and out of the park property with the existing curb cuts. And as Mark and Chad will probably tell you, usually you don't give up a curb cut on a state road, because once you give it up, you never get it back. So, but that's the plan, is to actually have less curb cuts here. I think with that, I'll turn the technical side over to Chad and Mark, because they're more appropriate for responding to the technical questions.
All right. So Chad Frost again for the record.
Hey,
I'm
Chad,
going to, yep.
Could you come here, please? I have a question to ask you before you get going on this. Would you take this truck, swing it, and swing it to this light?
Could we say this in the mic?
This is,
Short answer is no, but let me go through our rebuttal.
okay. I was just asking him if he could swing the drive entrance, and I had to put it in the mic.
Yeah. All right, so I'll start, and I'll say semi-technical, and then I'll let Mark answer the real technical. So first, what I want to stress is this is a 27-room hotel with a significantly smaller restaurant than what we currently have. And I'm a resident. I drive up and down Route 27 at least every day. My kids went to Precious Memories Daycare. I know what it's like to drive up Route 27, to pull in and out of that driveway. And you know what? It's really not as bad as we think it is. I've picked up my kids and dropped them off every day, so I know what that left hand in, the right turn, I understand, and I get it. This is
peak morning and afternoon rush.
It was during peak morning and afternoon rush. This is not a 500-room hotel, right? And when we hear hotel, we all imagine really big, intensive, a lot of use, right? And so I need you to keep in mind the size of this proposal. 27-room hotel and a smaller restaurant with a valet drop-off to get people on one side of the road without having to cross back and forth. When you look at Mark's report, 12 trips a day is the increase, right? 12 trips a day. I make more trips out of my driveway, shuttling my kids around than 12 trips a day. So it's not, and I get the fear, I understand. I'm just trying to put it into terms that we can relate to. It's not that significant. A Dunkin' Donuts coffee, I always love to relate to a Dunkin' Donuts site. A tiny little Dunkin' Donuts, hundreds of trips a day, right? If not significantly more than that. In and out, in and out, in and out. The amount of traffic a Dunkin' Donuts would create is way above this project, right? But because this is bigger, it's named a hotel, it seems like it's gonna have a high volume, but it really doesn't. When you go through a Dunkin' Donuts drive-through, it takes 5 minutes and you're in and out. When you come for a restaurant at a nice meal, you're gonna be there for a couple hours, right? So the traffic count is down, which is why the traffic report shows what it does. So it's important to keep that in mind. The other thing I'll stress, again, a resident, I understand Route 27 and the traffic. I'm a landscape architect, not a traffic engineer, but grade F in my world, is really good. DOT doesn't like it because it means that people have to slow down. I love that because that means it's safer, right? If you think about the safest place for you to drive or walk in town, it's downtown Mystic, right? And you're not flying through downtown Mystic in front of the drawbridge at 35 miles an hour. You're going 10 or 15. You know it's going to take you a couple of seconds. It doesn't take you 5 minutes, maybe if the bridge is up. But if the bridge is down, you can get through there. It takes a little bit of time, but that's also the best place to walk. It's the best place. It's the most livable area in town. So Route 27, I hear, yes, there's traffic volumes. One of the things we want to do with Boathouse Park is slow traffic down. It's called traffic calming. Everybody hears it and thinks it's a good term, but it means slow down, right? It's what makes it safer for everybody. The difference when you get hit, if you're a pedestrian and a car is going 35 miles an hour and hits you, you have a 90% chance of dying, right? If the car is going 25 miles an hour and hits you, you now have a 75% chance of living, right? That's a huge deal for all of us as residents walking up and down the street or crossing the street to get here. So traffic calming is important. Slowing cars down on Route 27 is hugely important, right? And I hear the parallel parking, it's my fault. But it's really there to slow traffic down, to provide traffic calming on Route 27, because we all know traffic comes into the intersection all the way up at the Golden Triangle at the light, it's slow. You go through that light and everybody hits the gas. And they speed down through here and they don't slow down until they get to this intersection. And then they drive slower through the rest of Route 27 because the road condition tells us to. The road is smaller, the visual space is smaller, we drive more careful because there's things that are happening, right? And so we pay attention. That's very important. That's what we're trying to do here, is add a lot of that street furniture and the visual cues to let people slow down when they come through here. So I understand people are worried about slowing traffic down, but it really is a good thing. We need to do it. If we want visitors coming here and we're encouraging people to speed through here, we should already change the speed limit. It's 35. There's no way it should be 35 there with 90,000 people crossing in winter. It should be 25 max. 15 would be better. So that's my rant about traffic calming. So I get the traffic concerns. There aren't any new curb cuts. We want to slow the traffic down because it does make it safer. The idea of the roundabout, I know it's been talked about a ton of times. It's actually a really bad idea in this location because roundabouts allow traffic to not stop. The idea of a roundabout, the reason DOT loves them is because traffic doesn't stop. It flows all the way through. When we want all these people to cross the road, we don't want traffic to not stop. We want traffic to stop so they have a safe time to cross. So that's why that's...
There's also not physically enough room to put it some substantial property impacts. It requires a large amount of space with the truck turning.
Yep. And I would also stress that data is data, right? And we all might have a hard time realizing it, but when we do a report from the summer and another report in the winter, and you can compare those two and say, literally, the data says 22%. We might have a hard time really buying that, but it's physical data counted on by a machine during the peak and during the winter. Now, when we did the winter counts, it was right around the holidays, just after Christmas and New Year's, so there could still have been an elevated time, which maybe if we did it again now, maybe it would be a lower traffic count with a higher percentage, but it should get us to that same overall high number from a summer perspective.
Okay, except for the moment, the numbers.
Yeah.
One of the problems we have here is, as the site currently exists, other than delivery trucks, there is no vehicle traffic in and out of either of these properties. Okay?
No public traffic, correct.
So all of the traffic that would come in and out of this site and out of the Boathouse Park when it gets is new.
On this side of the road, correct.
Exactly.
Same amount, yes.
And so that's a different kind of a hazard than 12 more trips a day, if you know what I mean.
I do, but again, the amount of traffic generated by 27 rooms in a smaller restaurant isn't, it's not Walmart, right? It's a small amount of traffic, which is why we do the study. I understand traffic studies can be hard to trust, right? I get it. But there's a reason that they're done, and there's a reason DOT relies on them.
Yeah, but my point is, all of this traffic on the west side of Route 27, in and out, is new.
Correct.
That's not 12 trips, that's not 12 trips, that's all of it. Whatever the volume this generates in terms of vehicle traffic other than delivery is all new. So that's a different different level of concern than just a few extra cars, if you know what I mean.
Figure 13 in the traffic study is a summation of all the trips that will be coming in and out of that driveway. Just to give you a sense, in the highest peak on Saturday, we're looking at 13 left turning cars out of there in the peak hour, in the highest peak hour, and 24 rights. The afternoon, it's 9 left and 21 right. So
Over a course of an hour?
Over the course of an hour. So, you're looking at 13 in an hour. I mean, you can do the math. It's one car trying to turn left every 4 or 5 minutes. You have to remember as well, a lot of the site traffic is still going in the way they do today. They're going into that north parking lot, and they're self-parking. You're really only looking at people who want to valet their cars that are going in there, and that's not going to be, I don't think, everybody. It's only going to be a portion of the total traffic site there.
Can you tell me, I'm sorry. Go ahead. What consideration you took, can you tell me what consideration you took towards the boathouse traffic, the type of traffic it will be, the large, the trucks with the large trailers, with these big, shells, with the teenage drivers? Did you take any consideration other than a trip count towards the type of vehicles, the type of drivers, et cetera, in your thoughts?
So my first answer to that is technically for this project, we can't, because it's not part of they're not a connected project. We are showing it because we know they're happening. We've thought about it, yes, but it's as part of the traffic volumes, traffic calculations, that has to be done as part of the Boathouse Park project, and it can't, and not together with this, because they're not the same owner, they're not being done at the same time.
And yet, all of your schematics
We have we show the driveway working together.
and you show a house, and you show a park, and you show as if this is all going to be connected nicely, et cetera, et cetera.
We make sure that the plan will work together, just as if this was a commercial development next to another commercial development, and you forced them to have a shared driveway because you didn't want an extra curb cut, you would do the one development separate from the other development and not combine the two. I know it feels a little bit like splitting hairs, but we're not trying to.
Okay, so that's good. So
but I
you
will
have
say-
not made that consideration.
So from a technical traffic perspective, correct.
Okay.
From the design perspective, obviously, we're working on both. We understand both. We understand the timing of when the crew team is going to be there to practice, when the community rowing is going to be there to practice. When they show up at 6 o'clock in the morning to row, I'm not worried about traffic on Route 27, right? We know that the crew team already practices at the Seaport. Their boats are stored there. If they're rowing on the water, they're already there. That use is already there. The traffic is already there. They're already parking in the north parking lot. We expect that, yes, when they come by their own cars, there will have to be some shared parking arrangements. That's being worked out between the town and the Seaport to figure out how that all works, because you can't fit everybody in that parking lot. We also know that when they come for practice, they come by bus a lot of times, which is why we have the circulation we do. We have the 2 driveways with Boathouse Park because of the circulation for the boats, as you mentioned. They're 65 feet long. They're on big trailers. It takes a lot to get them in and out of there, which is why we have to have the 2 curb cuts in order to get a boat in and out of that driveway instead of a single curb cut. And I will reiterate that there are 4 curb cuts currently on that property, and we're going down to 2.
So there'll be a second curb cut to the north?
No, these are the 2 curb cuts.
For the whole?
For the whole park, yep.
Oh.
Yep. There are 4 currently. There's one here where the access is. There's one about where that other driveway is. There's one into the garage building, and there's another one to the north of the garage
The
building.
pickup towing a
Six-
8-person shell? can
Yep.
swing in
Is what?
there? Can swing in and?
Yes. That's why that parking lot is configured the way it is.
Well done.
So we can get a shell in and out and not hit trees or light poles.
Can I change the topic for a second?
Sure.
Signage.
Yeah.
The the Delmar signs, the Core 10.
Yes.
Will they be lit and how will they be lit? I see a night rendering.
There is not, correct, there's not a night rendering. The plan is to have the Core 10 in one of the signs be cut out, so there's lit from behind, and the other one is the Core 10 is proud of the other Core 10, so again, it's lit from behind. So it's not an internally lit sign, but it's not up lights, it's not blasting lights, it's a very soft light hit from behind the Core 10 steel.
And where is that located?
The two signs on the
street,
along the street. Not on the building, correct, the street signs.
Yeah, I just
Yep.
want to understand why.
One facing north and one along the road.
Yeah, or the majority.
There is,
It separates their
I know where they
yeah, I'm trying to get it, there it is. There's a sign there.
That's the large one.
That's the larger one, and then there's one right there. That's, runs perpendicular. Again, directional signage, that's really there to get people to know this is the driveway when you're coming downtown.
That makes sense.
Yep.
I get you. Thank you.
If I may ask, I'm curious, and I know it's been asked, but I'm not sure if I really got the answer clearly. Is there a reason why you haven't oriented that drive-in to the right and married up to the main intersection? Was it considered, and were there reasons why you decided not to do that?
Yeah, as I tried to allude to in the beginning, it was considered. Again, it was really our first kind of gut reaction, is that's where it would go. Upon review and upon looking at traffic habits and visitors that come in, and the fact that we know we have, the Seaport already has visitors that try to turn in and come down there, the North Laneway as it is. They had a lovely person turn in, realized they couldn't go further because of the bollards. They came down the sidewalk here, realized that they couldn't get out this way, and turned and drove down the steps and got stuck on teeter-tottering on the steps, right? So the idea of trying to make that into a four-way intersection and loop through here and come in this way, it was looked at, and we decided that there would be a significant volume of traffic that would turn in there thinking they're going to the Seaport, or not even thinking, just saying, you know what, I don't care, I'm going to pull in here and drop grandma off because it's easier.
I saw one yesterday, just drive up the sidewalk all the way in there, unloading the baby carriage.
Perfect.
Yeah.
We don't want them to do that.
No.
Right. Right? And if every visitor coming to the Seaport tries to use this, it's going to be a problem. And so that's why we separated the driveways. That's entirely the reason.
Okay, and just out of curiosity, then you think the signage that you intend to put in place, if it was the current plan, would prevent people, coming in thinking, oh, I see the big building over there, turning in and getting kind of stuck in the same kind of loop you just described, which
Yep.
I understand.
Yeah, that's the point of this sign right there, which will have the Delamar brand, it'll have the artisan restaurant, it'll say entrance only, it will say nothing about the Seaport, to try to get everybody to understand that this is the entrance. If you're driving there, that's where you can go.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just one more question, if I may, because I'm curious, and I know we did ask about it, about maybe making that coming out a right turn only, correct? And was there a specific reason? Is that not allowed by regulation?
No, it's not that it's not allowed yet, and Mark can jump in, but it's more of, this has to go to DOT and to OSTA, and they're going to provide that. This is their roadway. They're going to tell us what to do, and we can't go to them until you guys make your local approvals. They won't review it until it's got local approval. So
And if they come back and say, no, go, you have to come back to us for
if there's a
any
significant change, we'll be back in front of you.
of the entire plan, not just the roadway.
If there's a significant change, we'll be back in front of you no matter what that change is.
They wouldn't make a change to anything
Other than
On the site.
On the site, it
Right.
would just be
driveway related.
Traffic related.
Right.
Excuse me, I'm trying to wrap things up.
Hold on.
Oh, no.
I'd like to finish rebuttal if we can. Do you have anything additional on traffic? I was going to reply to some of the flood
The
issue.
reason I'm still saying is, we have to be out of this building by 11 o'clock.
Okay, I'll do my best.
And we have other things on the agenda.
Okay. All right, so if I can wrap up some of the comments about flood, from Rick's comments about climate change, I fully on board. We are definitely doing resiliency planning. That's the reason this is going 2 feet up instead of just 1 foot up. The building will be floodplain compliant when we're done. The dry egress during a 100-year storm is, and I know the Circa maps. I was at a conference last week with Jim O'Donnell, the director of Circa, on climate and shoreline resiliency. So we get it. The problem with a 100-year egress, the building will have dry egress at a 100-year storm. That's when we're up at FEMA +2, we'll be dry. Route 27 will not be dry, right? And the lowest point of Route 27, which is to the north of here, right by Coogan Farm, it'll be somewhere about 5 feet underwater, right? So if we need to make a dry egress route from here to somewhere else, right, to 95, all development south of here would be not allowed by DEP. If we want to consider that we have to have a dry egress during a 100-year storm. I think the town should have their own management plan to say if we are expecting a 100-year storm, which is a massive Category 5, we would want to evacuate most of the area before we wait for 5 feet of water on Route 27. But I would stress, even if there's 5 feet of water at the lowest point on 27, the building is still dry.
We'll all go there.
What?
We'll all go there.
Yeah. So the sea level rise,
Stack the bar, we'll be there.
So we're totally on board with sea level rise predictions. In the 20 inches at this conference last week, it wasn't a matter of if we're getting 20 inches, it's a matter of when. We don't need to talk about is it 20, it's going to be 20 inches, it just might be in 30 years or it might be in 50 years, but we need to be planning for it now. And I would encourage you guys to do that on all applications in front of you. I think that's it. You got anything else?
You covered that. No, I think just to, again, John Casey, for the record, just to wrap up on Chad's point about the dry egress. I mean, it's a aspirational, requirement or goal, but realistically, I mean, this hotel and the people there are going to be in the same boat, maybe literally the same boat, is with much of the population of Mystic, just with the evacuation routes that currently exist. And there was just one point about leasing the land. Seaport is a private entity. It enters into private agreements with other private entities. It actually leases some of its buildings.
Latitudes right now already.
Right, like currently Latitudes is rented out to a third party that runs the catering. The global GFOE building is going to be leased to a third party. So it's not like a public entity, that anything like that. And actually, it gets you a little more tax revenue in the end when it's rented out to that third party. So,
Thank you.
yes.
I think that's it for questions. Keith?
So the development conforms to the MHD's standards, the hard and dry standards of the regulations. The commission has to basically determine whether it meets the zone's statement of purpose, the more hard to put your finger on, lofty language of the zone, and whether it conforms to that, whether it has a negative impact on the neighborhood, traffic, and all those other things, and whether it's appropriate for the area. As far as the decisions you make, there's 5 distinct decisions here. One is the decision on the conformance with the POCD and the comprehensive plan, which is basically a combination of the zoning regs and the zoning map together. There's also a decision on the waivers requested for the zone change, the decision on the master plan and zone change application itself, the decision on the site plan application, and the decision on conformance with the Coastal Area Management Act and the CAM application. And just to clarify, too, we have some of these floating zone applications, which are just the master plan, where they come back with a more detailed site plan. This is it for this. This is both combined. If you approve this, they won't have to come back before you. We did get comments from DEP just before the hearing. They do request that we read them into the record. Yeah.
Statutory. They can.
Amendments to the master plan. They say the application seeks to demolish an existing restaurant on waterfront land and construct a 3-story, 26-room hotel with a first-floor restaurant and a significant amount of fill with a basement and an AE10 flood zone, relocate existing public restrooms to the new hotel restaurant building. The site is 97,695 square feet in a MHD zone. Coastal resources include coastal hazard area, AE10, coastal waters developed shorefront, freshwater wetlands, and watercourses and shorelands. While we understand the plans may be renderings at this point without crucial details to determine conformance with FEMA standards, we offer the following comments regarding the proposal for a new hotel with a restaurant on the flood-prone waterfront site currently occupied by the Latitude 41 restaurant. While this waterfront site is currently occupied by the Latitude 41 restaurant on the Mystic Seaport campus, the applicant proposes to intensify this non-water dependent use by also constructing a new multi-story hotel. While this proposal does not displace an existing water dependent use, it does have an impact on future water dependent uses. The applicant has stated that this project is financially necessary to maintain the existing level of water dependent uses on the Mystic Seaport campus and should be viewed as an enhancement thereto. Additionally, the proposal will establish a new public access walkway from Route 27 in the municipal-owned parcel at the northern campus perimeter to the shoreline in the vicinity of the hotel restaurant. This should somewhat mitigate the adverse impacts to future water-dependent uses. FEMA flood zone. According to FEMA maps, the site is a designated AE10 flood zone. We urge the Commission to carefully consider the proposal to site a hotel for overnight guests on a flood-prone site. The current building to be demolished is a restaurant which does not house people overnight. The Coastal Management Act discourages development in flood zones, which would increase risks to people and property during flooding events. Specifically, the Act states that municipalities should manage coastal hazard areas so as to ensure that development proceeds in such a manner that hazards to life and property are minimized. To be consistent with the CCMA, the town needs to develop a flood contingency plan that includes evacuation of potential hotel guests during significant coastal storm events and documents dry egress from the building during 100-year storm events. It is difficult to assess whether the proposal is FEMA compliant as this time. Sheet A203 dated 1/17/20 indicates that a basement at elevation 4 is proposed as part of the restaurant structure. The lowest floor of the structure in a flood zone must be elevated at or above the base flood elevation according to FEMA. Furthermore, the granite stone veneer foundation appears to be a solid foundation with no flood vents or the ability for flood waters to freely flow through. However, if it is the intent of the applicant to fill a site to an elevation above BFE, FEMA would allow a basement. The applicant will be required to obtain a letter of map revision based on fill, letter of map amendment RF from FEMA to remove the land from the floodplain. Another option would be to dry floodproof the exterior of the structure so that no flood water can enter, which needs to be designed and certified by a licensed professional engineer. More information is also required for the construction methodology of the guest house and utility building proposed at the street. Okay. So the report has a bunch of recommended stipulations if you choose to approve this. And of course, these are just my recommendations based upon the application that you can choose to have, not have, or modify. And I have to make a point of these to give the applicant a chance to, comment on them if need be. But number one is that final plan shall be recorded prior to the issuance of any zoning permits. Number two, final plans shall be reviewed to the satisfaction of the town's engineering consultant. Number three, the applicant shall post an erosion sedimentation control bond. I won't read the whole thing. It's a typical thing about E&S bonding. Number four, the applicant shall develop a hotel evacuation plan for flood conditions. This plan shall be reviewed to the satisfaction of the Stonington Emergency Management Director prior to issuance of a zoning permit. Number 5, prior to the issuance of a certificate of zoning compliance, the applicant and police department shall develop a plan for parking enforcement at the shared parking spaces. In other words, is there going to be a time limit on those spaces? The police wanted to review that. Number 6, prior to the issuance of a zoning permit, the applicant shall supply sewer flow projections to the satisfaction of the WPCA. Number 7, final plan shall include flood hazard information and certifications, including FEMA map number, dry access statement, and information on the building's compliance with flood hazard requirements per section 7.7 and 8.4.1.12. Number 8, final plan shall include a table stating minimum building setbacks, dimensions required for the zoning district, and distances provided per section 8.4.1.8 and .11. Number 9, final plan shall label the adjacent Mystic River Boathouse property as located in the MHD, as this property was rezoned by the commission on 2/19/19. The last 3 I read the information was all provided by the applicant in the revisions, it just wasn't on the plan itself.
At this time, Chuck or Ryan have any questions before we close the public hearing? Do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Do I hear a motion on this application?
You can. It makes it more difficult if there's like a split vote and, people disagree on things. It's more straightforward to do it one at a time.
So where would your stipulations fall?
I think with
Site plan application?
I think they'd apply to both the master plan and the site plan.
Who's ready to make the motions? Ben?
Going on the 5 different motions. So this would be a decision on the plan of conservation and development comprehensive plan.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Wait, what are we, well, that went pretty fast, David. Can we go back, please? Because I couldn't hear, the mic was not on, and I don't think everybody could hear in the audience as to what the motion was.
Plan of POCD.
Does it meet the plan
Yeah,
of
that was it.
POCD? So I do think we need to discuss it. So it's interesting because this is on the water, and the water is part of the neighborhood. And because of the location of the hotel being pushed closer to the water, the height of the building itself, I feel it is a negative impact on the neighborhood. The water is the neighborhood. And I think that, one of the beauties of our town is that open skyline on the river. The applicant itself said that one of the reasons that they want to push the building back towards the water had to do with safety concerns. And yet, their data shows that there are no safety concerns. When everybody on the committee and a number of the comments said there were safety concerns on the traffic, again, the applicant says there are no safety concerns. Also, the applicant said that there were, in the last 3 years, I think there were two traffic violations. And so I just don't think that we have a justification here to take away that I think, inherent resource of our water and our view and the change in the neighborhood that this application is asking for. And again, the justification isn't there. They said themselves what the justification was, and then later on in the presentation, they went against that justification. So no, I don't think it meets the POCD. I do think it has a negative impact on the neighborhood.
Any other comments? All those in favor of this motion?
I think that...
Well, I was going to make one little comment. I mean, Seaport knows what they're doing. They have a business plan. And if this wasn't a good business plan for them, they wouldn't be here touting it. So I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. And it is above the floodplain. It's their business. And I just think there's no reason to deny it.
But this isn't about their business. This isn't
It is
about
it's their
Seaport
property, it's their
making
business.
money.
Private property,
This-
it's their business.
But from our perspective, as the board, the decision is, does it comply with the POCD? And I don't see how you can say this doesn't have a negative impact on the neighborhood, on the existing.
I don't see the negative impact. You're getting rid of an ugly restaurant and putting up a nice-looking hotel. I mean,
But you're changing the entire vista that is what the pictures are taken of. Let's be realistic. Even when you put up the pictures, the Chamber of Commerce and their advertisements of Mystic, it's the classic picture, right? And that classic picture has the open vista looking out into the Seaport. And now you're not going to have that anymore. So I do think it's a negative impact. I
don't see
and
it.
again,
I
it's
don't
not
see it.
about their business plan. We can go on about that forever.
Any more discussion on the motion? Gardner? Aye.
Yes.
Lynn?
Nay.
Fred?
Aye. Aye.
Motion passed, aye. Second.
The second one will be motion to approve the decision on the waivers requested. And do we need to read all those waivers, or would you like to do that, Keith?
Goes here.
We just surmise them?
It looks like it's really just the municipal fiscal impact analysis. The analysis to the towns.
Do I hear a motion on this application? Make a motion?
I made a motion to approve.
Second?
Oh, okay, I'll second it then.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Lynn?
No.
Lynn, no. Everyone else aye. Decision on the master plan to zone and rezone change. Ben?
You making the motion?
You. I'm asking.
I will make a motion to approve the decision on the master plan / zone change application.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion.
And this would include
Yeah,
your stipulations?
right.
Includes what, I'm sorry?
All stipulations.
All stipulations.
1 through
1
9.
through 9.
1 through 9.
Yeah.
Any discussion? Dick Gardner?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Lynn?
No.
Aye.
Aye.
I think the building is too tall. No,
Aye.
you carry it, right?
All right. Next one.
Approve the decision on the site plan application.
Do I hear a motion?
Make a motion to approve this site plan
Second?
application.
Second.
Discussion?
So once again.
Including stipulations 1 through 9.
Right. So once again, the site plan application includes the building design, and the height. Now, again, they've maximized the height. They could get the exact same function out of the building by reducing this height. And, it's right on the water.
How?
And, well, they have they have their ballroom that has, I think they said 16 feet ceilings or 12 feet ceilings, 15, thank you. You know, that could be reduced. They could get it down probably by 5
That's with
feet.
mechanicals included.
Yeah.
So that means it's down to 12 feet.
13 or something. You really can't, excuse me, you can't really build even a lobby or certainly a ballroom without.
Well,
I'm sorry. I'm trying to understand how it could be practical to lower the height of the building and how you do that and still have an acceptable venue for functions.
so it could be a redesign of the building. Maybe the entire building doesn't need a room over it for hotel, you know, a hotel room. I don't know.
Oh,
I personally like the design function that none of the mechanicals will be able to be seen from any direction. I think that's major. I mean, you talk about views. Who wants to see an air conditioning duct or a chimney or whatever the hell goes up on a roof? I think the fact that they designed it to conceal all of that is key. I mean, you talk about views, what you see, you won't see a lot of air conditioning ducts and stupid-looking things.
But why does it have to be one versus the other? Why, I mean, no one said anything about.
Well, that gives you height. You know, you need height to conceal that stuff. And I would rather have the height to conceal it than have it lower and have all that ugly stuff sitting on top of a roof, personally.
Right. But the other option is to make the building itself not as tall and to conceal the mechanics. So, I mean, it's not a one or nothing.
No, I think it's an either or. You either get the building size or you get the mechanical shell, and I would prefer to have the building size rather than the mechanical shell, personally.
The motion is first and
We're
second.
having a discussion.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
No.
Aye.
Aye. No.
Number 5, make a motion to approve decision on conformance with the Coastal Management Act and the CAM application.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
No.
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Motion approved.
All right, and the effective date for this is March 23rd, 2020.
All right, now we got another one.
Yeah.
We have something else on the agenda?
We got something on the agenda. You want to listen to us do zone change? Good luck. Now, if this traffic control changes things, you'll be back to us, right? Yeah.
Okay. Opening the public hearing, PZ 2001RA, Town of Stonington, PZC. Stonington Regulation Amendment to modify the flood.
You know, I can't say anything more, I don't
We
know.
have another public hearing, we're starting.
You're welcome.
All right, Mr. Chair?
Yeah. Is your light, is mic on?
Mike's on, isn't it? Yeah. Zoning regulation amendment to modify the flood hazard overlay district regulations to conform to new FEMA flood insurance rate maps for the Pawcatuck River, which will be effective 4/3/20. These changes are to map references only and do not modify any regulations.
So FEMA has come up with a new set of maps for the Pawcatuck River area, not going all the way down to the coast, but for most of the Pawcatuck River. So those new maps are going to be effective April 3rd in that area. For the most part, they're not major changes to people who live there. Most of the changes are further up in the northern part of town where there's not many buildings near the river. But as part of that, FEMA and DEP are requiring the town to change the map references in the zoning regulations. So this doesn't change any rules for anybody. It doesn't change any rules in the zoning regulations. What would make sense is if the zoning regulations could just say, people have to follow these maps as amended. But FEMA and the state don't let you do that, so whenever they change the maps, you have to go through this actual zoning regulation process just to change the sort of names and numbers and effective dates of all these maps. So when you look at the proposed text that's going to change, it literally is just the numbers and names and effective dates of these maps. So it is the simplest regulation amendment you can imagine.
Anyone else like to speak in favor of this application?
I inherited.
Anyone opposed, Colleen?
Understand what required.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Do I hear a motion on this text amendment?
Motion to approve this text amendment.
A second?
Second.
All those in favor? No discussion? All those in favor?
Effective dates, March 23rd.
Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Meeting adjourned.